Chapter 8:16. How is this possible? How could you possibly refine this seal? Ziyen stood where she was with a somewhat flustered expression on her face. This divine seal was the symbol of the sacred sex authority. However, compared to that, Ziyen knew another secret about it. It was also what she had been trying to obtain for the past 300 years. It seems that Zi Huang is either an old friend or an acquaintance of an old friend. Dugu Yunjin's expression was calm. The golden seal floated above his head, overflowing with divine radiance. Faintly, a terrifying suppressive power enveloped the sky, trying to seal all living things. The old friend that Dugu Yunjin spoke of was naturally Yi Qinchan. Although Ziyen was a rank 9 divine emperor, Dugu Yunjin did not take her seriously. The reason for that was because the divine seal in his hand was an ancient item. Its grade had long surpassed this world. Back then, he had submitted to the divine master and obtained a treasure from him. That was why he was unparalleled in this world. In the past few years, he had traveled the world in search of monstrous geniuses. When those geniuses grew to a certain level, he would suppress and capture them. Not only did he rely on his rank 9 divine emperor's might, but he also relied on this great seal of heaven and earth. Regardless of whether it was her name, appearance, or aura, he had never seen Ziyen before. In other words, this woman should not know about the divine master's name and the past 300 years ago. However, she knew about it. What did that mean? It meant that Yi Qinchan was truly in the Sea Emperor's palace. If it was not for her, there would not be a fourth person in this world who knew about the past. Master Yi, you've finally exposed yourself. Why can't I refine this seal? Dugu Yunjin sneered and took a step forward. With a divine sun surrounding him, it was as if a deity had descended from the 9 heavens. No. There's something wrong with this divine seal. Suddenly, Ziyen narrowed her eyes. However, the expression on her face grew even more fearful. Could it be that Zhou Yendao had really taken that step? Or could it be that he had fused with the aura within the seal to take that step? Damn it! Zi Huang, your time of death has arrived. Dugu Yunjin frowned. The complicated and desolate expression on Ziyen's face caused him to feel a trace of unease. Could it be that there was a secret within this divine seal? Boom! Boundless divine might descended from the sky, vast and majestic, crushing everything within 10,000 miles. At this moment, Ziyen and the others felt a grand force of the heavens and the earth descend from space, and a supreme force capable of suppressing an entire world descended, causing them to feel tiny in their hearts. You want to kill me? I'm afraid you won't be enough. Ziyen angrily shouted and turned to the 3 devils. The 3 of you, prepare to fight to the death. Facing a 9th grade divine emperor, there was no doubt that he could escape. With Dugu Yunjin's ability, this 1,000-mile stretch of sea was probably already enveloped by his divine sense. Escaping was absolutely impossible. Yes. When Ruyu nodded slightly and sat in the void again. The Qing Shao Guqin once again shone with immortal radiance. Heaven and earth darkened in an instant. Thousands of strange phenomena rose and fell. An unknown divine power was gradually surging. Boom boom! Streaks of attacks that contained the saint might of the great path collided in the void. As the divine might spread, the endless sea domain shook. Countless oceanic race experts walked out of their ancestral land, broke through the sea curtain, and stood in the void. At this time, their faces were filled with fear and trepidation. Just now, everyone only felt that the waves seemed to contain a murderous aura. Even some oceanic race members who were closer to the Sea Emperor Palace were annihilated by that aura. The endless sea domain was instantly dyed red. An endless bloody aura spread with the waves, frightening everyone. So it's him. In the void, Ling Xiao stood with his hands behind his back, a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. From the moment he saw Dugu Yunjin's true appearance, he finally understood why this first divine envoy's voice sounded so familiar. And why would he suspect him for no reason? It turned out that he was the old Taoist priest who had read his fortune in the eastern border. Although Ling Xiao had suspected his identity when he appeared for the second time, he did not have any luck or laws on him. If a ninth-grade divine emperor who was proficient in the art of heaven and earth wanted to conceal his aura, even Ling Xiao would not be able to detect it. Moreover, this person had cut off his own celestial opportunity. The Heaven's secret sect leader? Interesting, it was getting more and more interesting. Ling Xiao had seen the surprise on Ziyan's face just now. Zhou Yendao was probably the name of the current Xingzhou lord. As expected, he was not from the Foliaceae. In other words, he had indeed stolen from the sacred sect and deceived the experts of the Foliaceae from the upper world. But for some reason, Ling Xiao felt that there was a hint of a conspiracy. Ziyan's identity might be a descendant of the demon race that had been exterminated by the Divine Master. But she did not have any luck or background, so how did she escape? Moreover, the Foliaceae were the vassals of the celestial race and the ancient races of the upper world. The cultivation of their experts must be terrifying. Since they could seal this realm and forcefully suppress the cultivation of all living beings, how could they not know anything about this realm? If something was abnormal, there must be a conspiracy. Sect Master, do you recognize this seal? Ling Zhao's eyes were deep and seemed to be covered by the fog of the primordial chaos. It was indescribably mysterious and terrifying. Originally, he had thought that the secrets of this realm were all in the hands of the Divine Master. But now, it seemed that he had underestimated the methods of those ancient experts. The power of the heaven-sealing divine seal had probably exceeded the scope of a divine treasure. And where did such a numinous treasure that transcended the settings of this realm come from? What was its connection? I only know that the sacred sect has a divine seal that is used to suppress the dragon vein in the Xingzhou. Looking at the power of this golden seal, it should be it. Sect Master Taishuan's voice was low, and a solemn expression appeared on his face. With his experience, he could see the grade of this seal. But how could such a terrifying numinous treasure exist in a barren land like the Xingzhou lower world? Suppressing the dragon vein? Ling Xiao frowned slightly. Since it was an item of the sacred sect, why was Ziyan so surprised? Moreover, who was this woman? Why did Duguyunjin not know her, but she knew so many secrets of the sacred sect? Interesting. It seemed that the greatest gain of this trip was not from Duguyunjin, but this, Ziyan. As a loyal dog of the Divine Master, it was impossible for Duguyunjin not to have any sealing methods in his soul sea. It would be difficult to pry open the mouth of this divine envoy. But Ziyan was different. She was not a member of the sacred sect and stood proudly at the top of the sea region as a ninth-grade expert. Perhaps there were many secrets in her soul sea that Ling Xiao would not expect. This woman was too vicious and sinister. If he could not make the seal submit, it was best to kill her to prevent more trouble. That's right. I once heard that a dragon vein is suppressed under the sacred sect's divine mountain. It is the strongest in the 5 borders, and this divine seal has been there since ancient times. Sect Master Taishan nodded, but there was also some doubt in his eyes. Everyone knew that the so-called dragon vein was derived from the spirit of heaven and earth. If it had its own consciousness, who would be willing to be suppressed and sealed? Logically speaking, a divine item like the heaven-sealing divine seal should not be used rashly to prevent unexpected changes. Why would the divine master of the sacred sect give such an important item to the first divine envoy? Was he not afraid that the dragon vein would be lost and the sacred sect's luck would disappear? Chapter 8:17. The largest dragon vein in the Xingzhou? Ling Zhao's eyes trembled when he heard Sect Master Taishuan's words. He suddenly thought of a possibility. The Xingzhou's heavenly way restricted one's cultivation. Ling Xiao was still wondering how the Divine Master had broken through to the Venerate realm. But now, he seemed to have found the answer. To be able to use such a divine seal to suppress a dragon vein, just thinking about it made one feel terrified. If Zhou Yindao fused with this vein, would he really take that step? However, on second thought, Ling Xiao rejected the idea in his heart. Although the idea was reasonable, the timing was wrong. Since the dragon vein was under the Xingzhou Divine Mountain, Zhou Yindao had to at least kill Yi Qingchan to have a chance to obtain it. If he hadn't reached the Venerate realm, how could he be Yi Qingchan's opponent? Could it be that he wasn't the one who killed Yi Qingchan? In an instant, Ling Xiao felt a chill rise from the bottom of his feet. For the first time, he felt fear in his heart. Master, do you want me to take this opportunity to kill the first divine envoy and take the treasure? Sect Master Taishan asked in a low voice. It's not time yet. Ling Xiao shook his head. He didn't just want to kill Duguyunjin. He also needed Sect Master Taishan to capture Ziyan so that he could make use of her. If he used too much spiritual power now, there would be unforeseen event. The two ninth-grade divine emperors wouldn't die so easily in a short period of time. Boom! There were already ravines in front of the Ocean Emperor Palace. The heavenly way had fallen. The bottomless abyss could be seen everywhere. Wherever the waves surged, there were remnants of divine power. A divine trident had suddenly appeared in Ziyan's hand, and it was completely brilliant silver in color while boundless lightning markings surged within it. In fact, every time the trident fell, countless terrifying thunder cracks would appear in the void. It was extremely shocking. When Ruyu sat alone in the void, her eyes shone brightly as she flicked her 9 fingers. Thousands of demonic intent flowed between her fingers. However, the book demon and the chess demon were obviously struggling in such a battle. Even a wisp of its remaining might was enough to cause their minds to tremble, and they were sent flying while vomiting blood. Duguyunjin didn't panic in the slightest when facing the joint attacks of 4 people. He held the divine seal in his hand, and every single time it descended, it carried heaven-sealing divine energy, causing Ziyan and the others to block it in a sorry state. Zi Huang! Suddenly, when Ruyu lightly shouted, Ziyan's eyes also blossomed with divine light. Outside when Ruyu's body, a bloody mist suddenly rose, and the sound of the zither suddenly became piercingly cold. Vaguely, a straight heavenly Tao could be seen descending from the sky. On both sides of the heavenly Tao, divine trees towered. Snow flew everywhere, and only a single figure could be seen walking through the sky. His magnificence was unmatched. The sea of clouds overlapped, the mountains and rivers were boundless, yet they could not compare to a single strand of that beautiful figure's hair. This song was called Oblivion. It was the work of the great demon Wenruyu, who had gone mad due to his emotional trauma. It was also a masterpiece of the mortal world, a solo performance of the 9 heavens. However, although this soul song was mighty, it needed Wenruyu's blood and qi as a medium, and her life force as a guide. Otherwise, how could he live up to the word absolute? Yearning to the bone, true love is hard to let down. If I don't die, how can I forget? The wind and snow grew stronger, covering the sky. Everyone only saw the green figure dancing in the snow, dignified and charming, like a divine child of the celestial world, and also like a dream in their hearts. However, for some reason, his eyes were filled with sorrow. Heaven and earth mourned, and the sun and moon lost their brilliance. In the end, the green figure floated down from the sky. She reached out with her jade-like hand and pressed it toward Duguyunjin's head. Humph! Endless divine light rained down, and the snowstorm that filled the sky suddenly turned into blades that stretched out endlessly. Duguyunjin's eyes trembled, and he also felt a trace of uneasiness in his heart. Vast and mighty spiritual light gathered on the divine seal above his head, trying to resist the great demon's soul. Divine light soared into the sky, destroying the sky. Within the golden seal, there seemed to be an ancient aura that was awakening. Then, as the great demon's eyes trembled, it turned into a 300-meter-long dragon shadow and bit toward the celestial soul. Boom! A terrifying aura suddenly erupted. The instant the two attacks collided, the space completely shattered. Two spatial cracks extended for thousands of miles, almost piercing through the entire sea. At this moment, Duguyunjin's figure retreated several steps, and a trace of paleness flashed across his face. Now is the time. Ziyan's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and her figure suddenly disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already about 10 feet in front of Duguyunjin. As she waved her hand, a ferocious lightning dragon tore through the void, taking advantage of Duguyunjin's unstable state of mind to press down on his head. The lightning dragon was about 300 meters long, and every scale on it seemed to be made of brilliant silver. They were filled with demonic patterns and carried a great charm. "You're courting death!" Duguyunjin shouted angrily. His eyes were already filled with panic. Then, he reached out with both hands to meet the lightning dragon. However, at this moment, he was hastily blocking, while Ziyan was accumulating power to attack. Thus, the instant the two collided, Duguyunjin immediately felt a terrifying divine power pierce through his arm, and the sky behind him completely shattered. Duguyunjin's figure retreated explosively, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. With a thought, the heaven-sealing divine seal descended from the sky, blocking Ziyan, who wanted to chase after him. Die! However, right at this moment 2 fierce shouts suddenly came from behind him. The chess demon and the book demon each held a spiritual treasure in their hands as they appeared in the void. Just now, the chess demon had used the Tao of formations to conceal their auras so that they could hide in the shadows and wait for an opportunity to deal a fatal blow to Duguyunjin. The ancient slaughtering formation and several demonic figures descended at the same time, completely sealing off Duguyunjin's path of retreat. "Lowly ant, you actually dare to launch a sneak attack on me." Duguyunjin's expression changed again, and his eyes were filled with true rage. A beam of golden radiance suddenly shot out from between his brows. It was like a third divine eye that surged with a myriad of rays of light, and it transformed into a palace that suddenly descended. The golden palace rose in the wind, and in just a few breaths of time, it was 300 meters in size. The carved beams and painted pillars were dazzling in gold and jade, and it seemed to encompass heaven and earth and swallow the universe. At this moment, there seemed to be a series of celestial sounds that contained a profound Tao intent that could cause one's mind to sink into it and inexplicably lower one's guard. Heaven's secret forbidden technique, Heaven's Eye Palace. Ziyan's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and her jade-like hands continuously formed seals, forcing the heaven-sealing divine seal to retreat. Boom! However, before she could approach Duguyunjin, the golden palace had already enveloped the book demon and the chess demon. Vast and mighty divine might transformed into a huge force that pressed down on the golden palace from all directions. After all, the two demons' cultivation were only at the 6th stage realm. Even if the two of them appeared at the right time, it just so happened that, before absolute strength, any opportunistic methods were useless. A bloody mist rose, and the golden palace disappeared. The book demon and the chess demon's figures were no longer in the world. When Ruyu slowly closed her eyes, and 2 drops of tears flowed from the corners of her eyes. In the end, the 7 demons roamed freely, and 6 of them died. He was the only one left. What was the meaning of living alone? Moreover, back then, if he hadn't been obsessed with love and searched everywhere for Miss Ye's traces, perhaps the 7 demons would still be free and unfettered in the world, playing around in the mountains and rivers. Or perhaps, when the knife demon died back then, he should have understood, cut off his yearning, and lived in seclusion. Then, he wouldn't have fallen to such a tragic state today. Unfortunately, he couldn't forget her, and he couldn't let her go. He couldn't obtain her, and he was greedy. In the end, he couldn't tell if the one he loved was Yi Qinchan, or he loved the dream that didn't care about him at all. He regretted not meeting her earlier, and was in a dilemma. He originally thought that he would be saved by turning back. However, in the end, the song ended and everyone dispersed. Chapter 8:18. Divine Envoy Dugu, good move. Ziyan's eyes trembled slightly as she retreated. 6 god emperors surrounded him, but Dugu Yunjin killed 4 of them. Ling Xiao, if you were the one who set this up, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. Even Ziyan didn't expect the first divine envoy to have refined the sacred sect's most precious treasure, the heaven-sealing divine seal. This seal was set above the Xingzhou spiritual treasure. In other words, this seal didn't belong to the Xingzhou spiritual treasure. Someone had left it on the sacred sect's divine mountain to suppress the dragon vein. Dugu Yunjin was now a rank 9 god emperor, and he controlled this treasure. It would be difficult for her and the heavily injured Wenruyu to shake him. If she didn't leave now, she would lose both her life and her reputation. Fortunately, she had hidden Shi'er somewhere else after parting with Ling Xiao. Although Ziyan didn't believe that a mere human youth could threaten her rule of the sea region at first. Although she had been tyrannical and cruel all these years, she was also cautious. It was all for the sake of avenging Mrs. Blood feud one day. That way, she wouldn't let her down by becoming enemies with the demon world and saving her under the barren mountain. Zi Huang, it's your turn. Dugu Yunjin sneered, and his figure instantly disappeared. The heaven-sealing divine seal turned into a magnificent sea of divine runes in the sky. It covered the sky and smashed toward Ziyan. At this moment, Ziyan already had the intention to retreat. Without the 5 demons holding her back, she was facing the sacred sect's most precious treasure alone. Her face immediately turned gloomy. Humph, arrogant! Ziyan clenched her teeth. The lightning dragon behind her soared into the sky and turned into a ray of light, crashing into the golden seal above her head. Silver light filled the sky, and an incomparably vast power fluctuated. The sky froze. Only the silver light pierced through the sky and let out a deafening sound. Boom! The full power of 2 rank 9 god emperors collided. The power was unimaginable. The sky and earth instantly collapsed. The great Tao was obliterated, and a terrifying destructive power burst forth. Pucci! However, with Dugu Yunjin's strength, even Ziyan felt a great pressure when he used his full power to activate this sacred sect's most precious treasure. The lightning dragon was instantly shattered, and the golden seal became dim and lightless. Dugu Yunjin's body trembled slightly as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, whereas Ziyan was blasted flying. A mouthful of blood sprayed from her mouth, and her beautiful face was already incomparably pale. Qin demon! He's injured. Stop him for a moment, and I'll kill him with my innate divine ability! Ziyan angrily shouted, her eyes filled with panic. On the other hand, Wenruyu merely nodded lightly. She stood up and strode towards Dugu Yunjin. Soul power and divine will began to intertwine around his body. A deep and vast fluctuation swept out, turning into a milky way that flowed above the void. In Wenruyu's hands, the Qingshao Guqin also shone brightly. All the Tao patterns on the Guqin seemed to have come to life at this moment. Raging flames surged, divine trees blossomed, rivers flowed in reverse, and the sun and moon formed the sky. Layers upon layers of strange phenomena appeared around Dugu Yunjin, completely concealing his figure. Wenruyu was a rank 8 martial emperor. She was only a step away from rank 9. Now that he was fighting with his life on the line, burning his bloodline and divine soul, one could imagine how powerful he was. You overestimate yourself! Dugu Yunjin coldly snorted. The heaven-sealing divine seal above his head shone brightly again. Divine might gushed out, completely destroying the many strange phenomena. In fact, every time a strange phenomenon was destroyed, Wenruyu's face would turn a shade paler. When all the soul power in the sky dissipated, his figure suddenly fell from the sky and heavily landed on the ground, unable to get up again. But, just as he turned around to look at Zi Yan with a bitter expression, he saw that she had already turned around and fled into the distance. Zi Huang Yu, when Ruyu was stunned, and blood instantly dripped from the corners of his mouth. Obviously, he'd never imagined that the Violet Emperor would actually be so shameless. At the instant he stopped Duguyunjin, not only did the Violet Emperor not attack, the Violet Emperor had instead turned around and fled. Ha ha ha, Zi Huang, why are you in such a hurry? Where are you going? However, just as Zi Yan's figure entered the void and was about to leave, a ray of clear light suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. Countless Tao patterns intertwined, and in just a breath's time, the entire world was locked down. At the same time, in the void, two figures suddenly stepped out. They were looking at the three people below with playful eyes. In the lead, Ling Xiao was wearing a black robe. He looked carefree and unrestrained. Even his face had a gentle and calm smile. Behind him, Sect Master Taishan stood with his hands behind his back. Thousands of divine patterns were moving freely in his eyes. However, his figure was half a step behind Ling Xiao. It was obvious that this ninth-grade divine emperor was following that young man's lead. Ling Xiao, Zi Yan and Duguyunjin were shocked at the same time. Especially when they felt the terrifying aura from Sect Master Taishuan's body, their eyes trembled for a moment. Of course, in Zi Yan's eyes, Ling Xiao was the sacred son of the sacred sect. At this time, he had most likely come to kill her. However, Duguyunjin sighed softly in his heart. He originally wanted to take a step towards Wenruyu, but he also stopped. He seemed to understand why the 6 great elders and 2 great protectors of the Tianji sect died at the same time. With Sect Master Taishuan's cultivation, killing 8 divine emperors wouldn't waste too much spiritual energy. However, Duguyunjin couldn't figure out how the number 1 divine emperor of the eastern border, the sect master that even the divine masters were afraid of, was related to Ling Xiao, the successor of the Ling people. Although the Ling people were of the ancient race and were quite famous in the eastern border, how could they be worthy of Sect Master Taishuan's submission? Also, why did he feel that the Ling Xiao in front of him was different from the Ling Xiao that he had seen before? Although there was a divine aura flowing around the two of them, the Ling Xiao from before was ethereal and had a kind of will of Tao that was one with the world. However, the Ling Xiao in front of him had a domineering aura in his eyes that looked down on the world. Zi Huang, we meet again. Ling Xiao smiled gently and looked at the pale Zi Yan in front of him. He had seen the entire battle just now. Now, 4 of the 5 demons were dead. The remaining Wenruyu's vitality was also gone. It seemed that she wouldn't be able to survive. As for Zi Yan and Duguyunjin, not only were they exhausted, but they also suffered serious injuries. It was about time for this battle to end. You don't come over, Zi Yan instinctively took a step back. She didn't know when it started, but she had a trace of instinctive fear towards this human youth in her heart. Destroying the flood dragon humans, killing Izhan, deceiving the great demons, and scheming against the divine envoys. Which one of these things was like what a youth would do? Moreover, with Zi Yan's status as a scheming person, although she had already sensed a trace of a scheme, she just couldn't struggle and couldn't find any flaws. In fact, every time she made up her mind to kill this youth, he would take out another temptation and force her to walk down the path that he had chosen. Her intelligence was close to that of a demon's. Originally, it was said that demons had a long lifespan. Everything they saw and experienced would eventually turn into schemes. However, she, a rank 9 great demon who had lived for hundreds of years, was now being toyed with by a youth and was unable to extricate herself. In the end, she could only silently wait for him to succeed. Zi Huang, what are you afraid of? Didn't you call me here to kill divine envoy Dugu? Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. Suddenly, a trace of demonic intent flashed in his eyes. Chapter 8:19. Ziyan's eyes trembled as she frowned. Especially the gentle smile on Ling Zhao's face. It was like a sneer, causing her heart to be filled with shame and anger. However, once she denied that she had conspired with Ling Xiao to kill Duguyunjin, given this young man's temperament, he would probably just stand by and watch. He might even betray her and join hands with Duguyunjin. After all, he only said that he was invited. He did not say that he would definitely help Ziyan. Originally, Ziyan wanted to use the 5 demons to get rid of Duguyunjin and then lead the trouble to Ling Xiao. Someone had to take the blame for the death of a divine envoy. Otherwise, once the divine master descended, the endless sea would become a dead sea. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Now, she had actually become that black pot. However, if that was the case, Ling Xiao would not kill him so easily. In the eyes of a villain, there was no friendship. There was only benefit. Zi Huang, have you forgotten? That's really a pity, Dugu. Young master! Ziyan's beautiful eyes narrowed as she clenched her teeth. Suddenly, she called out to Ling Xiao. She had an irreconcilable hatred with the divine master. Thus, she was not afraid of offending this power. However, now that she had been exposed, she would probably have to hide with Shi-Er for a long time. Zi Huang, have you remembered? Ling Xiao smiled playfully. Ziyan could only nod slightly. Her tone suddenly turned cold. I hope that young master will join hands with me to kill the first divine envoy. Haha, why should I join hands with Zi Huang? Ling Xiao shook his head and smiled. However, Ziyan's expression instantly froze. To be honest, Ziyan felt an indescribable regret in her heart. If she had agreed to Ling Zhao's request to join hands with him, she would not have fallen into her current situation. The current her was completely under Ling Zhao's control. Even if he wanted her now, Ziyan would not be able to refuse. If young master agrees to join hands with me, I will give you all the resources of the Sea Imperial Palace. Ziyan clenched her teeth and said hatefully. At this moment, the grievance in her heart could be imagined. Obviously, this young man also needed her help to kill the divine messenger. However, she had to beg him and curry favor with him in order to survive this calamity. What can I do? I feel wronged as well. But I can't die yet. Otherwise, my plan of 300 years will be completely destroyed. Purple Emperor's memory is not good. I don't trust you. How about this? Give me your Qiankuan bag as a deposit? Ling Xiao said with a gentle smile, but there was no fluctuation in his eyes. From the very beginning, the method he used to control Ziyan was her life. Whether it was Yi Zhan or the dragonfolk, they were all stumbling blocks to Ziyan's hegemony. By eliminating them, Ling Xiao had stabilized Ziyan's position. However, from the very beginning, Ling Xiao had known that what she wanted was definitely not a sea. Of course, no matter what her ambitions were, they had nothing to do with Ling Xiao. However, such a woman would not be willing to die. Not to mention, she was a villain. She was unscrupulous and sinister. As long as she could live, she was willing to pay any price. Ziyan's beautiful eyes glared fiercely. Lightning surged around her body, but it calmed down in the blink of an eye. She took out a Qiankuan bag from her bosom and threw it at Ling Xiao. The expression on her beautiful face had already calmed down. Now, regret and anger were useless. In the end, Ling Xiao had won this game of chess. She only hoped to kill Duguyunjin quickly and leave the sea to seek the world again. Purple Emperor is straightforward. Taoist Master, join forces with Purple Emperor and fight the first divine messenger. Ling Xiao smiled indifferently and turned to look at Duguyunjin, who was standing in the sky. From the beginning to the end, this divine messenger of the sacred sect had not said a word. 9 Death. He finally understood the meaning of this sentence. If he had chosen to return to the central border back then, it would have been the end of his life. However, in the end, he did not dare to disobey the divine master. Moreover, He was afraid of Yi Qingchan's return. Therefore, he had arranged many contingencies and chose to stay in the sea. That was 9 death. Taoist Master Taishuan's cultivation was unfathomable. He was once famous for killing an elder of the sacred sect at the foot of Tao Comprehension Mountain. However, in the end, no one in the entire Xingzhou had seen him use his full strength. Only the Divine Master had come personally and interacted with him. However, the world did not know how deep this interaction was. After all, Taoist Master Taishan had not taken a single step out of Tao Comprehension Mountain since that day, and the sacred sect had surprisingly swallowed their anger. Previously, Dugu Yunjin had also calculated the origins and identities of Ling Xiao and this mysterious Taoist master. However, he only saw endless fog and layers of cover. Of course, if he was at his peak, Dugu Yunjin was confident that he could use the heaven-sealing divine seal to deal with him. However, he was already greatly exhausted and had been seriously injured by Wenruyu and the others. In addition, there was also Ziyan, who had not yet done anything. Yes, it was 9 death. Lord Ling Xiao, what is the meaning of this? As the saying went, the older one was, the more afraid of death one was. Moreover, Dugu Yunjin had lived for 1,000 years and cherished his life. If not for this, he would not have betrayed Yi Zichen and joined a new master. However, in the end, it was precisely because he had betrayed Yi Zichen that Zhou Yendao had never truly believed him and had always been wary of him. As a result, he was isolated and helpless. He had the title of the first divine envoy, but could not use any of the sacred sect's power. He could not even send a message. Therefore, in this world, everything was empty except for karma. Retribution always came unknowingly. Lord Divine Envoy, why do you ask when you already know the answer? You should have had your eyes on me a long time ago, right? Ling Xiao raised his head, looked into Dugu Yunjin's eyes, and chuckled softly. He had long known that the divine master of the sacred sect was looking for the Taoist prodigy. Now that he knew the identity of the first divine envoy, some of the doubts in his heart were gradually resolved. He was afraid that when this divine messenger came to the eastern border and told him his fortune, it was just to confirm his thoughts and to raise pigs and kill pigs. He was a loyal servant of the Divine Master and traveled around the world just to change his identity and do some shady business for the Divine Master. However, why did he not gain the Divine Master's trust? Apart from the fact that Zhou Yendao was problematic, it was obvious that this divine envoy also had secrets that Ling Xiao did not know. Humph! If you kill me, aren't you afraid that the Divine Master will find out and destroy Ling people? Dugu Yunjin snorted coldly and tried to use Ling people to intimidate Ling Xiao. Divine Envoy, don't worry. Before killing you, I have already tested it on other divine envoys. Now I'm afraid that the Divine Master can't get away. Ling Xiao shook his head. However, Dugu Yunjin's face suddenly turned ashen. What? You killed other divine envoys? Why should a dead person know so much? Sect Master Zi Huang do it. Ling Xiao smiled, but did not look at Dugu Yunjin again. He lifted his foot and walked towards Wenruyu, who was on the verge of death. Thunderclouds suddenly appeared in the void thousands of miles away. In just a short moment, the entire sea area surged with billions of waves. Chapter 820. Boom! High up in the sky, Sect Master Taishan took a step forward. Every step he took seemed to be filled with Taoist rhythms and divine power. In between his eyebrows, there was an ancient divine pattern that secretly bore the power of the heavens. Even his robe seemed to be shining with primordial light, as if a celestial from the 9 heavens had accidentally landed in the mortal world. Heaven and earth were vast, and all living beings bowed. Not far away, Ziyan did not dare to stand side by side with Sect Master Taishan. Obviously, she was very cautious. She was surrounded by lightning, and the shattered thunder dragon phantom once again stood tall in the air. Although the demonic figure looked somewhat illusory at this moment, the demonic aura it emitted was still extremely frightening. Especially on the halberd in her hand, there was a sea of lightning that pierced through the sky. Duguyunjin's expression was cold and even a little gloomy. As a ninth-grade divine emperor, he was already at the end of his rope. If he attacked now, he would most likely die. However, Sect Master Taishuan's barrier of light contained the rhythms of heaven and earth. With his current strength, he would not be able to break it in a short time. Once he was distracted, he would immediately reveal his weakness. Although the collision between two peak cultivators was magnificent and difficult to determine the winner in a short time, it was even more dangerous and unpredictable. If he was not careful, it would be difficult to turn the situation around. I did not expect that I, Duguyunjin, would end up in such a desperate situation after roaming the Xingzhou for almost 1,000 years. What a joke! Duguyunjin looked up and sighed. His only hope was that the cultivators of the sacred sect could arrive in time. Although he already knew from Ling Zhao's words that the remaining 3 divine envoys were most likely dead, but, Shui Ro, wait! Since Ling Xiao had planned this and conspired with Ziyan, how could he let Shui Ro go so easily? Originally, he did not know that Sect Master Taishin was behind Ling Xiao. He only thought that with Shui Ro's strength, it would be safe to send the letter. But now it seemed like it was the end of the road. Sect Master Taishin, did the 8 divine emperors of the Tianji sect die in your hands? In the end, Duguyunjin sighed softly. His old eyes flashed with sadness. Sect Master Taishin frowned slightly but did not say anything. He took a step forward and appeared above Duguyunjin's head. The winds and clouds within 10,000 miles of the void suddenly changed. Thousands of strange phenomena appeared in the sky. Thunderclouds gathered and heavenly lightning punishment descended. He struck out a seal with one hand, and there seemed to be billions of Tao patterns surging in his palm. Flawless clear light covered the sky and covered the earth. The grand Tao of slaughter contained within it caused Ziyan to feel a sense of unease and terror. Dugu Yunming snorted coldly. The heaven-sealing divine seal suddenly released 10,000 rays of golden light. Like an awakened true dragon, it pressed towards the light. Boom! The moment the two collided, countless sounds of the great path reverberated. Order, precepts, heavenly Tao, and earthly rhymes instantly crumbled. Just at this moment, Ziyan brazenly attacked. Lightning that could destroy eternity descended from the sky and charged at Duguyunjin. Although their cultivations were both at the 9th rank, Ziyan's monster body was stronger than her physical talent. Now that Duguyunjin's spiritual energy was gathered in the divine seal, Ziyan had a chance to kill him. At this moment, Ziyan no longer hesitated and used her full strength. In her opinion, Ling Xiao definitely wouldn't kill her. Otherwise, no one would be able to take the blame for killing a divine envoy. You're courting death. Duguyunjin's face was no longer as calm as before. Even his golden robe was stained with blood, and he looked a little miserable. However, facing Ziyan, he didn't retreat. Or rather, he couldn't retreat at all. He could only reach out his palm and strike the void. 1,000-foot golden palace appeared out of nowhere and smashed down with an aura that could suppress eternity. Boom! The deafening sound of thunder spread for 10,000 miles. However, in the end, Duguyunjin was forced back 1,000 feet. Meanwhile, lightning shot out from that extended arm, corroding his body and gradually erasing his life force. The first divine envoy, the number 1 great emperor of the 5 borders, was clearly powerless against 2 great emperors. Break for me! Tao Master Taishin stood in the air, and the Taoist rhymes around him formed thousands of divine shadows. Divine sounds that could penetrate one's soul resounded. Auspicious clouds and divine light intersected, and then the heaven-sealing divine seal was enveloped in layers. The divine seal roared as if it was about to break free. It let out a piercing sound of sorrow. However, in front of an ancient expert, it dimmed in an instant and was annihilated by the endless Taoist patterns. Poof! Blood spurted out from the corner of Dugu Yunjin's mouth, and the despair in his eyes could no longer be concealed. Ling Xiao looked up at the void. His eyes were extremely calm, but he was more or less confused. It seemed that the outcome was already decided. However, what Dugu Yunjin asked Tao Master Taishian just now made him fall into deep thought. He already knew that the 8 great emperors of the Heavenly Secrets sect weren't killed by the Tao Master. At first, Ling Xiao thought that no one in this world could do it except the Divine Master. But now it seemed that he was wrong. With the master-servant relationship between the Divine Master and Dugu Yunjin, it was impossible for him to kill the great emperors of the Heavenly Secrets sect. Moreover, Dugu Yunjin was now in a desperate situation. If the Divine Master was here, he would have saved him. But no. Who killed the subordinates of the Heavenly Secrets sect master and gave Ling Xiao a big surprise? Given Dugu Yunjin's temperament, he definitely wouldn't have summoned the 8 great emperors to die. In other words, the cultivation of the 8 great emperors shouldn't be too weak. But they were still killed inexplicably, and even Dugu Yunjin didn't know who did it. What did this mean? It meant that the 8 great emperors died together, and they didn't have time to send a message. Suddenly, Ling Xiao felt a trace of surprise in his heart. With such cultivation, could there be another venerable hidden in the Xingzhou? Cough, cough, Lord Ling Xiao, excuse me, great demon. When Ruyu was lying at the bottom of the sea below Ling Xiao's feet. His bones were all broken, and even his spirit was severely injured. Senior 1. Ling Xiao lowered his head and looked at the pale and weak great demon. A sinister look flashed in his eyes. Young master, can I ask you for a favor? When Ruyu gasped for breath, and even speaking took a lot of effort. Senior, please speak. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently, but he already guessed what Wen Ruyu wanted to say. What kind of bad intentions could a 300-year-old bootlicker have? It was nothing more than a parting of 3 lifetimes, like a painting, snow mountain and green clothes, unforgettable. But, great demon senior, is it appropriate for you to confess your feelings to my lady in front of me? I have a zither song that I want to play for Lady Yi, but it seems that I won't have the chance. Cough, cough. When Ruyu's expression was lonely, and the corners of his mouth were full of bitterness. A man and a zither business, bearing the name of a demon for 300 years. In this world, I'm lucky to have snow on the mountain, and I'll grow old with you. Okay. But, without waiting for the great demon to finish speaking, Ling Xiao had already nodded his head happily. When Ruyu was stunned, he raised his head and looked at Ling Xiao. His mouth trembled for a long time, and he didn't know what to say. Was it that straightforward? Although Lady Yi and I were old friends, she is now your sweetheart. I thought you would hesitate, and in the end, you reluctantly agreed because I was about to die. How come? It's fine. Besides, I haven't finished speaking yet. Senior, you don't have to say anything, I'll see for myself. Ling Xiao smiled gently. A black moon suddenly appeared in his eyes, and his soul power was vast. In an instant, the world became colorless, and everything became empty. Chapter 821. Vast soul power pierced through the air and into Wen Ruyu's eyes. In a flash, the great demon spirit was swallowed into Ling Xiao's soul sea. At this moment, Wen Ruyu was already at the end of her life and was on the verge of death. Moreover, Ling Xiao's spirit was already the strongest in the Xingzhou, and Wen Ruyu was no match for him. Where is this? Wen Ruyu was at a loss as he looked at the black soul palace in front of him that pierced into the clouds. His eyes flashed with surprise. Senior. Ling Xiao's figure descended from the sky and landed in front of the soul palace, his expression indifferent. Lord Ling Xiao? You? Great demon senior, you can go in peace. I will play your soul song for Qinchan. However, since I helped you fulfill your wish, shouldn't you pay a price? Price? I can teach you the Guqin song. When Ruyu frowned slightly. For some reason, he felt that the Ling Xiao in front of him was different from the peerless young master he knew before. No need to trouble yourself. I'll do it myself. Demonic intent suddenly swirled in Ling Xiao's eyes. Above his head, the grand primordium divine talisman bloomed with a dazzling demonic light, like the nether river descending from the sky and pouring into the world. Even before when Ruyu could react, he felt a devouring force surging in from all directions, completely refining his spirit into nothingness. At the last moment before his death, when Ruyu's eyes flashed with horror, he stared blankly at the gentle smile on the black-clothed youth's face, and only endless coldness remained in his heart. Inexplicably, he felt that everything in front of him was illusory. Like a dream, like dew, like fog. It felt unreal, as if it was a dream. The dazzling soul light flashed, but Ling Xiao's spirit could not advance any further. Under the suppression of the heavenly Tao, the strongest in the Xingzhou was no stronger than a divine emperor. At this moment, the Guqin demon's memories surged like a tide. He became famous at a young age and obtained a soul technique. They were regarded as evil by countless people, and only when Ruyu knew that they were only coveting the soul cultivation method in his possession. Forget the opportunity. This technique was a zither song, but it was also a peerless technique. Using the zither to enter the soul, using the soul as the sound, killing people without leaving a trace. 300 years ago, when Ruyu's soul technique had been perfected. By chance, she had met Yi Qinchan, who was looking for traces of the sky demon. Luckily, she had managed to escape with her life. From then on, a bootlicker began 300 years of cultivation and improvement. Even though the saber demon had fallen, he had not truly awakened. The so-called seclusion was more like a helpless act, wanting to cultivate the immortal Tao, but straying onto the demonic path. He was supposed to travel the world freely, but in the end all he saw was emptiness and was trapped in love for 100 years. In the end, he was neither an immortal nor a devil. Desolate for a lifetime, lovesick for half a lifetime. Forgot my phone? Good name. In Ling Xiao's eyes, soul might suddenly flourished and was annihilated. He lowered his head to look at Wenryu's corpse and put the Qingxiao zither into his bag. Originally, he was worried that he would lack a girl who could play the zither by his side, to the extent that he even lost some of his interest in drinking wine. Now that he had the zither devil's memories, the only thing he lacked was a girl who could cultivate her divine soul. In the void above, the heavenly law was destroyed. Layers upon layers of spatial cracks rose and fell one after another, not stopping for even a moment. At this moment, half of Dugu Yunjin's body had been shattered. Blood spilled out and scattered with the wave. On the other hand, Sect Master Taishuan's aura was a little weak, but there were no injuries on his body. As he waved his hands, endless light turned into miracles. Ling Xiao frowned and seemed to be deep in thought. Now, he had uncovered the identities of the Divine Master and Dugu Yunjin. The Heavenly Secret Sect probably set up the outstanding beauty list to search for geniuses of the heavenly law for the Divine Master. But at the same time, a new fog came to him. How did the Divine Master take that step? Who was Ziyan? Also, back then, he did not know Dugu Yunjin's identity at all. Since this person appeared in the eastern border, how could he not know Yi Qinchan's name? Boom! Suddenly, a terrifying explosion came from the sky. Then, Dugu Yunjin's figure fell from the sky and fell into the sea. At this moment, all the bones in his body had been shattered. Every inch of his skin was corroded by thunder and turned into an array, destroying his vitality and suppressing his spiritual power. Even his divine soul could not leave the soul sea. He could only let the origin of thunder slowly destroy every inch of his body and divine soul. Lord! Sect Master Taishian descended from the sky and handed the sky-sealing divine seal to Ling Xiao with both hands. Yes. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently and kept the divine seal. He walked to Dugu Yunjin's side and lightly stepped on his head. I'll ask you a few questions. If you answer me, I'll give you a quick death. Ling Xiao, you will disappear from the Xingzhou land with the Ling people in the end. The sacred sect will not let you go. Blood kept dripping from the corner of Dugu Yunjin's mouth, but there was no panic on his face. Instead, he was strangely calm. You don't have to worry about whether I disappear or not. Tell me, why did you help the Divine Master collect all the geniuses of the Tao all these years? Ling Xiao gently stepped on Dugu Yunjin's head and pressed it into the ground. However, at this moment, a look of surprise flashed across Ziyan's face. Dugu Yunpi's body was sealed with her strongest Thunder Origin seal. This strand of Thunder Origin seal was her true natal divine ability. Even a demon god emperor would be destroyed in body and soul if he touched it, not to mention a human youth. But it was very strange that Ziyan felt a chill in her heart. Only now did she realize that she seemed to have underestimated this black-robed youth. Originally, Ziyan only thought that he was good at scheming and never missed anything. Although she did not know why Sect Master Taishan was willing to be his servant, it was definitely not because of his strength. However, at this moment, looking at the gentle-looking youth who raised his foot and stepped on Dugu Yunjin, Ziyan felt that she was wrong, very wrong. Not only was this youth scheming, but his strength had also reached an unimaginable level. How could it be? Miss was talented and had taken more than 20 years to reach the God-Emperor realm in the upper world, where the spiritual aura was at its peak. If she had not been harmed by a villain and ended up in the holy state, how could she be trapped in the Venerate realm? However, this Ling Xiao did not look like he was more than 18 or 19 years old. How did he do it? What is it? Ha 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 ha. Dugu Yunjin sneered sinisterly. So what if you're shockingly talented and have peerless talent? You will all die. Everyone will die. At that time, you will understand what it means to become nothing. You are collecting geniuses of the Tao for the Divine Master to cultivate, right? Ling Zhao's lips suddenly curled into a smile, while Dugu Yunjin and Ziyan's expressions froze almost at the same time. Seeing the expression on the first god's emissary's face, Ling Zhao's guess was finally confirmed. However, how did this demon who had deceived the world reach the Venerate realm and kill Yi Qinchan? One had to know that even powerful ancient experts like Xiong Huan and Sect Master Taishan were suppressed by the heavenly Tao and their cultivation fell. Divine Master? The Saint's sect was just a small force that the Foliaceae had casually arranged in this world. What was a Divine Master? Chapter 822. She's back. She's back. Ha 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 ha, retribution, it's all retribution. Dugu Yunming laughed crazily. As he laughed, his eyes were filled with sadness. A crushing defeat, a crushing defeat. The path to immortality had always been a magnificent one. All races would do anything to pursue the immortal path. It had been so since ancient times. But in the end, the heavenly Tao was reincarnated. Some people were destined to stand on the other side of the world from the moment they were born. Most people were just a current in the great Tao Milky Way. Even if they surged and dazzled for a moment, they would only be like a bright star flashing and gradually fade away. It was just a storm, a dream that would disappear in the blink of an eye. She's back. Ziyan's brows furrowed slightly. Her lightning-like eyes were similarly filled with shock. Even the gaze she used to look at Ling Xiao was filled with indescribable doubt. Could it be that the she Dugu Yunming was talking about was the young mistress? Retribution? It seems like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Ling Zhao's lips curled up into a smile. His eyes were clear, but there was a faint trace of demonic intent circulating around his body. An ancient and terrifying aura started to boil in the world. Wherever Ling Zhao's gaze landed, endless demonic intent transformed into demonic runes that devoured light and suppressed Taoist rhymes. A terrifying demonic figure appeared, as if it was stepping on heaven and earth. It stood in the void, suppressing the immortals and gods. The expressions on Dugu Yunjin and Ziyan's faces froze again. The two of them stared angrily with their mouths wide open. They didn't say anything for a long time. The world was so silent that one could hear a pin drop. The layers of waves receded, and the sun and moon sank together. Only Ling Xiao remained calm. The last trace of doubt in his heart had completely disappeared. The Divine Master's aura was indeed related to the Sky Demon. At this moment, Dugu Yunjin's eyes weren't filled with fear and despair when he saw the Sky Demon. Instead, they were filled with disbelief and shock. This expression meant that he had seen the Sky Demon's aura before. The Divine Master's identity was most likely the one that Liang Yi had mentioned, who had obtained the demon bone. Ling Xiao still didn't know why he couldn't see through Dugu Yunjin's holy physique when he first met him. However, from what Lord Taixin said, Ling Xiao knew that the lord of the Tianji clan would disappear for a period of time every 100 years. It was most likely related to this. Was he trying to escape the heavenly Tao's reincarnation by dispersing his cultivation and shattering his saintly body? One last question. Who killed Yi Qinchan? How could that be? How did you? Dugu Yunjin's mind trembled. His eyes were blank, as if the faith in his heart had been shattered. At this time, his face was already extremely pale, and even his body seemed to have a trace of death aura. At this moment, he was no longer the high and mighty first oracle of the saint. He was just an old man with a broken Taoist heart. Fear, helplessness, and absurdity filled their eyes. On the other hand, a look of caution gradually appeared on Ziyan's face. She held a jade talisman tightly in her jade-like hand, and she quietly moved further away from Sect Lord Taixin. A sky demon. Another sky demon had appeared in the Xingzhou. How could that be? Originally, Ziyan thought that Ling Xiao would not kill her so easily. Instead, he would shift the blame to her to escape the punishment of the saint. But now it seemed that she was overthinking it. The sky demon was not tolerated by the 9 heavens. Even in the Azure world, it was an absolute taboo. How could he easily expose such a secret to an outsider? And given Ling Xiao's temperament, since he did so, it was likely that he had the intention to kill. Oracle Dugu? Ling Xiao lifted his foot and lifted Dugu Yunjin's head. His demonic eyes were piercingly cold. Impossible. Die for me. Die. All of you. Be careful, my lord. Sect Lord Taixin shouted softly and pressed his palm down. Endless Tao patterns appeared in the void and finally turned into a clear light divine seal, which smashed towards Dugu Yunjin, who suddenly stood up. Pucci. In the latter's current state, it was impossible for him to withstand Sect Lord Taishuan's furious attack. Therefore, when the ancient seal smashed down, the body and soul of the Xingzhou's #1 great emperor were shattered at the same time. A strong smell of blood spread and thousands of soul lights rose. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly. The demonic blade in his hand suddenly stabbed down and swallowed the endless blood qi. At the same time, there seemed to be a demonic sun floating in Ling Xiao's eyes. There were thousands of strands of demonic light, which evolved into the shape of an ancient talisman. The world suddenly darkened for an instant, and the thousands of soul lights were annihilated. However, at that moment, lightning suddenly bloomed outside Ziyan's body. She waved her hand gently, and countless thunder patterns appeared out of nowhere, turning into a 1,000-feet-long thunder dragon that bit towards Ling Xiao. My lord! Sect Lord Taishuan's eyes narrowed slightly, and his figure suddenly disappeared. However, there was no trace of panic on Ling Xiao's face. Instead, there was a hint of playfulness. From the moment he exposed his demonic body, he naturally did not want to let Ziyan go. The area within 100 miles of the Ocean Imperial Palace had been sealed by Sect Lord Taishuan's natal Tao power. In other words, even if someone was hiding in the dark, they would definitely not be able to see what was happening inside. No matter who the expert who killed the 8 great divine emperors of the Tianji sect was, once he forcefully broke through the boundary, sect Lord Taishan would definitely sense it. Buzz. The thunder dragon pierced through the void and almost instantly arrived in front of Ling Xiao. Even sect Lord Taishan was one step slower when a 9th-grade divine emperor suddenly launched a sneak attack. Of course, Ziyan did not only want to kill Ling Xiao, but also to attract sect Lord Taishuan's attention. Therefore, she turned around and charged towards the clear boundary without hesitation. With Ziyan's talent in array formation, it was naturally easier for her to break through such a seal boundary than others. Even so, this collision still caused the spiritual power around her to dissipate, and her mind to tremble. Boom! Endless thunder fell like the entire Milky Way from the sky, instantly swallowing Ling Xiao's figure. Sect Lord Taishuan's eyes narrowed slightly, and a strong sense of uneasiness suddenly appeared in his heart. He guessed that Ziyan would launch a sneak attack, but shouldn't she be the one to launch a sneak attack? Therefore, as long as he was seriously injured, Ling Xiao would not be a threat to her at all. At least, that should be the case from Ziyan's point of view. However, just as sect Lord Taishuan's figure appeared and suppressed the thousands of lightning bolts, his eyes quietly narrowed. At this moment, he saw that the ground where the lightning bolts fell collapsed, forming a terrifying abyss. However, above the abyss, a black-robed figure stood in the air with a gentle smile. Just now, Ling Xiao hadn't hesitated at all, and he'd hidden himself within a region. With the thunder wool covering him, even sect Lord Taishan did not notice any clues. My lord. Even with sect Lord Taishuan's temperament, there was a hint of shock in his eyes as he looked at the calm young man. Although he knew that Ling Xiao's identity was terrifying and his methods were heaven-defying, even he had to be careful when dealing with Ziyan's attack just now. How did his lord avoid being locked on by a 9th-grade divine emperor's divine consciousness? Even his robes were not stained by a speck of dust? Zi Huang, you did not disappoint me. Ling Xiao raised his head and looked at the graceful figure who was constantly smashing the boundary. His tone was calm as he spoke. How could a villain have so many morals to speak of? Unscrupulous. This woman was becoming more and more admirable. Ziyan turned her head in a daze, and her pretty face suddenly turned pale. Especially at this moment, the gentle smile at the corner of Ling Xiao's mouth made her, a 9th-grade divine emperor, feel a chill down her spine. Chapter 8:23. Ling Xiao. There is no enmity between us. Why do we have to fight to the death? This is the Ocean Emperor Palace. Even if the Divine Master investigates, he will kill me first. If you let me go, I can take the blame for you. Ziyan's eyes trembled. It was as if there was a lake in her eyes that suddenly rippled. Especially at this moment, Tao Master Taishan was not in front of Ling Xiao, but above him. What did this mean? It meant that Tao Master Taishan had not blocked her attack for her. In an instant, Ziyan felt a chill in her heart. There was an indescribable fear. Was the body of the heavenly demon so terrifying? Oh, take the blame for me? Ling Xiao shook his head and chuckled. His expression gradually turned cold. What is the relationship between Ziyan and the sacred sect? Ling Xiao had some guesses from Ziyan and Duguyunjin's conversation just now. It was obvious that the new Sea Tribe Emperor also hated the Saint Church. Thinking of how the Divine Master had slaughtered the 9 Netherworld Phoenix clan, Ziyan probably also carried a blood feud. So, she used an extremely violent method to unify the sea region, but in fact to fight against the sacred sect? This kind of scheming and courage was indeed an overlord. But at the same time, such a person would never submit to others. Therefore, Ziyan could not live. I have a blood feud with the sacred sect. As long as you and I join forces, the sacred sect can be destroyed. Otherwise, even if you have the Sky Demon's body, under the rules of the Xingzhou state, you will not be Zhou Yandao's opponent. Ziyan's pretty face gradually calmed down. She was peerlessly beautiful and enchanting. At this moment, she even wanted to disturb Ling Zhao's mind. There was a hint of charm in her eyes. Oh? The rules of the Xingzhou state? How did Zhou Yendao reach the venerable realm? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, but there was no fluctuation in his eyes. Even if Ziyan's looks were enough to cause all living things to go crazy, in Ling Zhao's eyes, women could only be divided into whether they were useful or useless. Zhou Yendao did not reach the venerable realm. Ziyan's face suddenly flashed with vicissitudes. She shook her head slightly. What? He hadn't stepped into the venerable realm? Suddenly, the confusion in Ling Zhao's heart grew stronger. How was he able to kill Yi Qingchan without stepping into the exalted realm? Or was Yi Qingchan really not killed by him? The Yuan Venerate realm is actually an excuse for the Xingzhou continent. Due to the shackles of the heavenly Tao, no one in the Xingzhou continent can reach the Yuan Venerate realm. Hence, the Yuan Venerate realm was created. Back then, Zhou Yendao's strength was at most in the Yuan Venerate realm. Ziyan sighed quietly, while Ling Xiao looked at Sect Lord Taixien with some confusion. The latter nodded gently. The Yuan Venerate realm is rather special. It requires one to transform one's spirit into Yuan, communicate with the heavenly Tao, and borrow the power of the heavenly Tao to temper one's body. This realm is called Yuan. Only by integrating this wisp of heavenly Tao into one's body can one truly be called a venerate. Of course, even in the higher realms, stepping into the supreme realm is still extremely dangerous, even more so than the lightning tribulation. The power of heaven and earth is vast and boundless to begin with, so for a human body to support the heavens, it is easier said than done. That is why many people stop below the supreme realm, yet are still a bit more powerful than divine emperors. I see. Ling Xiao nodded, seemingly enlightened. The shackles of the Xingzhou were guided by the heavenly Tao. As long as the heavenly Tao of this realm was sealed, wouldn't it mean that the possibility of people stepping into the supreme realm would be completely cut off? It turned out that the so-called divine emperors who dominated the world were just a joke. The supreme realm was the true beginning of controlling the power of heaven and earth. But now, it's hard to say, seeing Ling Xiao ponder, Ziyan's lips curled into a charming smile. The so-called negotiation was, of course, to put pressure on the other party and prove one's worth. Only then could one plan to cooperate. Everyone in the Xingzhou knew about Zhou Yendao's strength. Even if he was only in the origin realm, he was definitely not someone that Sect Lord Taixien and the others could contend against. How many ninth-grade divine emperors were there in the world? Therefore, as long as Ling Xiao wanted Devourer, he would definitely be able to see his value. Hard to say. Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly. He increasingly felt that Ziyan's identity was not just a demon whose clan had been exterminated by the Divine Master. That's right. That heaven-sealing divine seal is the most precious treasure of the sacred sect. I heard that it already existed before the sacred sect appeared. Ziyan smiled, her expression becoming more and more confident. And the most terrifying thing about this divine seal is not just its grade. There's another more important reason: it suppresses the true dragon vein of the Xingzhou. The true dragon vein? Ling Xiao nodded slightly. He had already guessed it when he heard the sect lord's words. The divine seal was so powerful that it could suppress an entire world. With the means of the Foliaceae, why didn't they merge and refine it? Obviously, there was a reason why no one dared to touch its existence. That's right. That dragon vein is said to be the soul of a true dragon, the ancestral bloodline of the 9 heavens. No one knows who killed it and suppressed it here. Fear flashed across Ziyan's eyes. As a demon, her fear of a true dragon's bloodline was imaginable. A mere Northern Territory demon emperor with a trace of a dragon vein could suppress an entire territory and achieve eternal fame. Originally, Ling Xiao thought that Hua Hua was the only true dragon in the Xingzhou. But now it seemed that he had underestimated this world. Back then, before Hua Hua could transform, she could intimidate god emperors at the divine general realm. But how could the people of the Xingzhou know the true terror of a true dragon? Their knowledge was limited, so their fear was naturally one-sided. Only a ninth-grade god emperor like Zi Yan knew what a true dragon's sacred power was. Now, Hua Hua's cultivation was still low and she had yet to display the power of a true dragon. Once her cultivation reached the peak of the world, the situation of the 9 heavens would definitely change. However, because of this, Ling Zhao's heart was filled with confusion. Zi Yan had the body of a lightning dragon. Although she was a 9th-grade demon emperor, how could she know such a great secret? Even the sect lord of Taixin only knew that the heaven-sealing divine seal was used to suppress the dragon vein. He didn't know that the dragon vein was formed from a true dragon's soul. Interesting, it was getting more and more interesting. Foliaceae might not be able to suppress a true dragon. Could it be that the shackles of this world weren't the methods of the Foliaceae? Was this the true reason why countless sky demon remains were suppressed in the lower worlds? The layers of fog had never dissipated. But now that Ling Xiao was advancing, he had also removed the first strand of fog. This path to immortality was indeed full of secret. But when the fog of the 9 heavens dissipated, would the one who appeared be an immortal or a demon? You said that the cultivation of a divine master isn't necessarily limited to the origin realm. What do you mean? Ling Xiao sighed inwardly. Half of 100 miles was 90 miles. Now that he had killed the divine envoy and come into contact with the true peak experts of the Xingzhou, he felt that the previous trials were more or less too easy. The heaven-sealing divine seal has suppressed the dragon spirit for thousands of years and has long been tainted with the fortune of a true dragon. But now that it has appeared in Duguyunjin's hands, it means that the dragon chi on it has already been refined by someone. Ziyen sighed. This was the reason why she was truly terrified when she first saw the seal. Chapter 8:24. Dragon Chi? Refined by someone? Ling Xiao frowned, quickly understanding the deeper meaning in Ziyan's words. Since the dragon's soul had been sealed in the central border and sealed in the world, it was definitely not simple. Even a wisp of dragon chi was a heavenly fortune for the experts of the Xingzhou continent. After being sealed for 1,000 years, the dragon chi within the seal could be imagined, but someone had refined it. Duguyunjin was already dead, and there was no trace of dragon chi on his body. Therefore, the one who had refined the dragon chi was very likely divine Lord Zhou Yendao. That's right. I suspect that Zhou Yendao has opened the seal and is plotting for the dragon soul. Ziyan's expression was grave, and the apprehension in her eyes did not seem fake. This was because she had followed the young miss and had personally witnessed the terror of the dragon soul. Even with her lightning dragon bloodline, she felt insignificant in front of it. And once Zhou Yendao found a way to devour it, the Xingzhou continent would truly become the world of demons. Of course, Zhou Yendao was just a human, so the chances of him succeeding were minuscule. However, as a villain, he would never bet his life on probability. Plotting for the dragon's soul? Suddenly, a light flashed in Ling Zhao's heart. He seemed to think of something and was somewhat shocked, but he did not know where this shock came from. Who are you? Why do you know so many of the sacred sect's secrets? In the end, Ling Xiao could not figure out where this shock came from. Instead, he looked at Ziyan. This woman had always been treacherous and sinister. Her words could not be completely trusted. Therefore, it was better to kill her and search for her. It's best if you don't know my identity. Just like you said, as long as we have common interests, we can't be considered enemies. Ziyan shook her head, her expression resolute. She had seen Duguyunjin's madness just now. Could it be that the young miss had really been reborn? And the sky demon was already an enemy of the world. Once he learned about the young miss, it was inevitable that he would change his mind. After all, compared to a fake divine lord like Zhou Yendao, the young miss' mission was to suppress the demons of this world. "Oh, but I don't trust you, sect master." Ling Xiao smiled gently, and a trace of killing intent suddenly appeared in his eyes. Beside him, sect lord Taishan took a step forward, bringing with him thousands of great paths as he walked towards Ziyan. "Ling Xiao, you'll regret this." Ziyan's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly as a wisp of disbelief flashed across her pretty face. She couldn't figure it out. She had already analyzed the situation so thoroughly, so why did this young man still want to kill her? Did he really have the confidence to face an origin realm, or even an exalted realm cultivator alone? Buzz. Ziyan clenched her teeth, but she didn't dare to hesitate. She sent out a hand seal, and a resplendent silver light blossomed in the sky. Tens of thousands of lightning bolts converged and runes surged. In the end, they turned into a seal that slammed down on Lord Taishan. At the same time, a jade talisman flickered with a cold light in his palm. In a single breath, the world fell silent. A strand of coldness silently suffused the air and froze everything. Sensing the bone-piercing chill, Ling Xiao narrowed his eyes and immediately shouted, "Stop!" Buzz! Sect Lord Taishuan's footsteps came to a halt as his body floated in the sky. Ziyan's expression also turned serious as she looked at Ling Xiao in confusion. She clearly didn't understand what this young man was planning. "Who exactly are you? What's your relationship with Qinchan?" Indeed, the jade talisman in Ziyan's hand just now had given off a near-perfect law of extreme ice. In the entire Xingzhou, Ling Xiao had only seen Yi Qinchan comprehend such a law. Even Shi Si had only comprehended the law of ice, which was far less terrifying and profound than this extreme ice. "Qinchan?" Ziyan's beautiful eyes widened as she looked at Ling Xiao in disbelief. With his status as a chosen, it wasn't surprising that he knew of Yi Qinchan's name. Moreover, since he had schemed against Great Demon Wenruyu, it was impossible that he didn't know of his past. But Qinchan? Was it a somewhat ambiguous rotten smell? Indeed, the jade talisman in her hand was given to her young mistress when she was at her peak as a life-saving trump card. Today, she had first fought Duguyunjin and then sect Lord Taishan. It was already a dead end. Originally, she had hoped to use this talisman to severely injure sect Lord Taishan, but she didn't expect this young man to call her young mistress. "Qinchan? Who exactly are you?" Ziyan didn't answer and instead asked a question. Ling Xiao was treacherous and couldn't be trusted rashly. "Yi Qinchan is my woman," Ling Xiao said indifferently, but Ziyan's mouth suddenly fell open. "It can't be right?" Although her young mistress was in her prime and extremely beautiful, she was someone from 300 years ago. Even if she was reborn, how could she fall for an 18 or 19-year-old young man? Besides, Yi Qinchan had an extremely cold personality. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to comprehend the law of extreme ice. She had always viewed demons as a disaster, so how could she be on good terms with him? "Do you recognize this pagoda?" Ling Zhao's mind moved, and the ancient glazed pagoda instantly floated in the air and stood above his head. Ancient glazed pagoda. Ziyan covered her red lips with her jade-like hand, her eyes flashing with excitement and surprise. "Young mistress is really back?" "That's right." Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. From the beginning, he felt that Ziyan's understanding of the sacred sect was too deep. Even Duguyunjin probably didn't know such a great secret, but she knew that the heaven-sealing divine seal was suppressing the soul of a true dragon. However, Ling Xiao didn't expect that this demoness was actually Yi Qinchan's servant. So, she should have completely turned evil in the past 300 years? Where is young mistress now? Ziyan was clearly a little emotional. She had planned for 300 years, and every step she took was hair-raising. It was all to avenge Yi Qinchan. She didn't expect to hear news about young mistress when she was in a desperate situation today. 300 years. She had gone from a simple little demon to stepping over thousands of demon corpses and ascending to the throne of the Sea Emperor. She had no background and no one to rely on. She even had to constantly be on guard against the sacred sex pursuit. Only Ziyen knew the bitterness in her heart. When I parted with Qinchan, she should have gone to the central border. She once said that there was something calling her there. I killed Dugu Yunjin originally to find out Qinchan's whereabouts. Central border? Young mistress, what is her cultivation now? Ziyan's face paled, and she instinctively felt a little uneasy. Divine King. What? Ziyen clenched her teeth, and coldness circulated in her eyes. But in the end, she coldly snorted. Humph. You keep saying that young mistress is your woman? Do you have proof? Proof? What proof do you want? Ling Xiao slightly raised his brows. Ziyen pondered for a moment before saying, Open your soul sea and let me see your memories. If you are really young mistresses, man, then you are my master. I will naturally be loyal to you. If you are not, Chapter 825. Why should I open my soul sea? Ling Xiao smiled gently, and his eyes became more and more playful. I'm afraid you don't understand the current situation, do you? If I want to kill you, can you escape? If I use this jade talisman with my full strength, it can withstand a full-strength attack of an exalt. Do you have the confidence to take it? Without you, you can't kill me. Ling Xiao shook his head. Since you want to see it, I'll let you see my soul memories. As soon as he finished speaking, soul light suddenly bloomed in Ling Xiao's eyes, which turned into a soul screen and stood in front of Ziyen. With Ling Xiao's current soul techniques, not to mention the ancient soul assimilation technique, there were many mysterious techniques recorded in the Dark Inyama Sutra. Dao Master Taishan tactfully retreated to the side. His master's secret was not something a servant like him could see. However, when she saw the scene in front of her, even Ziyan's expression changed instantly. Then, it turned red like the sunset. She saw that there were some indescribable scenes in the soul screen. Gulp. At this moment, Ziyan only felt her heartbeat accelerate, and her breathing became rapid. Even her delicate body trembled unconsciously. She actually felt like she was in the scene, and her mouth was indescribably dry. At this moment, the scene in the soul screen changed again. Yi Qinchan stood at the top of the sky, covered in wind and snow. Wherever her gaze landed, heaven and earth would be frozen. She had the charm of the Ice Empress. It's Miss. Ziyen covered her mouth and exclaimed, a flawless fluorescent light flickering between her brows. At this moment, she finally believed that the young man in front of her was really Mrs. Man. Master. Ziyen bowed deeply to Ling Xiao. The fragment of the soul screen just now was undoubtedly Ling Xiao's soul memories. Her talent was in the Thunder Dao and Array Dao. There were no array fluctuations in the soul screen in front of her, so it was obviously not an illusion. Moreover, looking at Ling Xiao's calm face, perhaps he really had a way to escape the ice talisman's suppression. Open your soul. Ling Xiao's expression was calm. As he looked at Ziyan's red face, he did not relax in the slightest. No matter how deep her relationship with Yi Qinchan was, without the soul imprint, she could not be relied on. Of course, a rank 9 martial emperor's servant was still extremely valuable. Otherwise, with Ling Xiao's character, he would have killed her long ago. Why would he waste his breath on her? My lord? I can't afford to lose my identity. If you're willing to submit, open your soul sea. Ling Xiao didn't say anything else, but Ziyen remained silent. With her current strength, it was far from enough to kill a divine master. On the other hand, Ling Xiao's methods and strength were far superior to his own. Moreover, since she was the Taoist companion chosen by the young miss, she naturally had her own intentions. After all, her mistress had returned and was now in danger. She needed Ling Zhao's strength to save her mistress from danger. Even if, this time, she had gambled wrongly, at most she would die. As long as her mistress had a chance to live, she would not let it go. Being born in the dark was not scary. What was scary was living in the dark, but never seeing the light. At this moment, she suddenly understood a phrase recorded in ancient texts. Rather than believing in immortals, it was better to pray to demons. Immortals could kill one person for the sake of all living things, while demons could kill all living things for one person. I hope you can save the young miss. In the end, Ziyen took a deep breath. The red on her face faded, and she opened her soul sea. A wisp of soul flew out from Ling Zhao's eyes and disappeared into his eyes. Buzz! Ziyan's expression turned solemn, somewhat lonely. At this moment, she could feel that there was something in her soul sea that could instantly change her mind. Speak. Tell me your background and what happened to the sacred sect 300 years ago. Ling Xiao looked at Ziyen with an indifferent expression, but his heart was filled with anticipation. Finally, the Xingzhou's secret was about to be revealed. Master, actually, I don't know much about what happened 300 years ago. Back then, my cultivation was weak and I was just a spirit pet of the young Mississippi. I came from the upper world and was the illegitimate daughter of the Lightning Master, one of the 10 great demon lords of the divine demon region. Later, I was hunted down by my own clan. It was young Miss Qinchan who saved me. Divine demon region? Lightning Master? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows. That shouldn't be the case. According to this pattern, Ziyen should be a woman of destiny. How could she have no luck? Was it not tragic enough? At that time, I was severely injured and was taken into the Glaze ancient pagoda to recuperate. Later, the young miss was framed and I followed her to the lower world. As for what happened 300 years ago, I was cultivating with the help of Dragon Qi in the sacred sect's divine mountain. One day, the young miss came with serious injuries and told me to leave temporarily. However, before I could escape, I saw Zhou Yendao chasing after her from the foot of the mountain and killing her. There was an extremely terrifying demonic aura on his body. This demonic aura, I once saw it in the Glaze ancient pagoda. It was the aura of the sky demon. Ziyan's eyes were filled with sorrow. It was obvious that she had a deep resentment towards that past. Glaze ancient pagoda? Sealed devil bone? Ling Zhao's eyes narrowed slightly. He suddenly understood something. The 4th floor of the Devil Pagoda was empty. If that was the case, what was sealed in the pagoda back then should be the remains of a sky demon. However, Yi Qinchan returned with serious injuries? Even if Zhou Yendao had fused with the Devil Bone, how could he be her match? Who was the one who injured Qinchan? I don't know. The young miss didn't say anything at that time. However, I saw some sadness between her brows. Given the young miss's character, she didn't reveal such an expression even when she was punished to descend to the lower world. However, at that time, Zhou Yendao's cultivation had yet to step into the revered realm. It was impossible for him to be the young miss's match. I guess there must be something hidden behind this. Ziyen shook her head blankly. Although her cultivation was in the Divine Emperor realm, she was only a second-stage Divine Emperor. She couldn't help Yi Qinchan at all. Instead, she would become a burden to her. Therefore, she followed the young miss's instructions and escaped from the central border. Originally, she thought that the young miss would be able to eliminate the devil and return the world to its former glory. However, in the end, she received the news that the young miss had colluded with the devil and was killed. Ziyen secretly sneaked into the central border. Originally, she wanted to report the truth to the sacred sect and prove the young miss's innocence. However, she discovered that the so-called devil had become the current divine master of the sacred sect. How ridiculous was that? The divine master who truly saved the world was slandered as a devil. However, That devil who devoured gods openly replaced her identity and sat on the divine throne. Should I say that the people of the world are ignorant or that devil is too cunning? Ziyen didn't know how he had deceived the people of the world. However, she was originally a demon and had countless connections with Yi Qingquan. Even if she stood out and told the world that the Divine Master was a devil, how many people would believe her? As expected? But in the entire Xingzhou, who could hurt Yi Qingquan? Ling Xiao sighed in his heart. Now that the identity of the Divine Master had been completely revealed, not only did he not feel relieved, he was even more puzzled. Faintly, Ling Xiao felt that there was an even greater conspiracy behind all of this. Master, let's go to the central border now and find the whereabouts of the young miss. Seeing that Ling Xiao was silent, Ziyen immediately became anxious. What is her identity? Ling Xiao suddenly raised his head and looked into Ziyan's eyes. He asked in a deep voice. Chapter 8:26. Ling Xiao already knew about Shi-Er's background. She had the body of a dragon girl and was the pet of the creator. However, with Ziyan's personality, it was impossible for her to teach her disciple and leave her inheritance. Moreover, Ziyan had threatened him to stay away from Shi-Er. This meant that this girl was very useful to Ziyan. Shi-Er. Ziyan's face was filled with doubt. Aren't Master and Miss Dao companions? Why is he still thinking about Shi-Er? Also, you don't even look at me and only think about my disciple? Master, I advise you not to touch Shi-Er. Oh? Why? Ling Xiao smiled gently. How could he not see the doubt in Ziyan's eyes? At this moment, he was too lazy to explain. Yi Qingquan is her maid, but I didn't say that she is my only woman. Because it will leak. Ziyen pondered for a moment and said softly. Leak? That's right. Master, that dragon soul may be the only thing in this world that can step into the venerable realm, but with our mortal bodies we can't bear the dragon's might. But Shi-Er is different. Ziyen smiled slyly and continued. I've studied the history of the Xingzhou continent and found that there was only one sentence mentioned in the ancient books. 1,000 years ago, this world was dominated by the demon race and there was a demon dragon that ruled the world. Later, it was killed by an immortal. Since then, there were no records of a true dragon. However, Shi-Er's bloodline has the aura of a true dragon, so I guess she is the descendant of that dragon soul. Ling Xiao nodded lightly and finally understood exactly what Ziyen was scheming. Using Shi-Er as bait to lure the dragon soul into the world. It was difficult for any demon race, especially those with ancient bloodlines, to give birth to a descendant. Therefore, once a descendant with a pure bloodline appeared, it was always seen as the hope of the race. This was the reason why the demon race's geniuses were so arrogant and looked down on everyone. Because they usually had the support of the entire demon race behind them, especially the supreme demon race and the dragon race. This kind of people had an extremely resounding name, which was Long Outian. Why not call it Outian Wang, Outian Tiger, Outian Dog? Do you understand? Not bad. Ziyen looked at Ling Xiao meaningfully. When Miss and I descended to this world, we saw that dragon soul with her. According to Miss's estimation, the cultivation of this dragon soul when it was alive might have already transcended the immortal realm, undying? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows. In the Xingzhou continent, the highest level of cultivation was the supreme of heaven and earth. What kind of level was the immortal realm? The immortal realm is the highest realm that can be reached in the current myriad realms. In ancient times, there were still other realms above the immortal realm. However, now no one has been able to step foot into that realm. Ziyen explained. When she saw that Ling Xiao was still confused, she shook her head and smiled. Actually, in the azure sky world, the paragons of heaven and earth are already the peak of the various races. They have become undying beings and have disappeared for tens of millions of years. However, I once heard the young miss mention that the Azure Sky World Lord suppressed the myriad of world. His cultivation is definitely above the paragons. I see. Ling Xiao nodded indifferently. From the current setting of the Xingzhou continent, after the ancient gods unified the 9 heavens, they must have set up many methods to suppress the myriad of races. As for the so-called immortal realm, it should be the level above the paragons. However, whether this level referred to a single realm or multiple realms, Ling Xiao did not know. So, what do you plan to do? If Shi-Er was really the descendant of that dragon soul and had luck on her, perhaps this heavenly fortune would really fall into her hands in the end. She was the woman of the Son of Heaven, and also the person of Heaven's will. Her background was obviously not strong. It was said that there was a god in this world, but he was later killed. Now that he suddenly had a descendant, what would he do? Of course, he would pass on his divine position and re-establish the rules. Originally, I planned to use the strength of the sea race to surround and kill the Divine Master. Even if we could not trap and kill him, it would give Shi-Er enough time to merge with the dragon soul. Would you be so kind? Ling Xiao smiled gently, but saw that Ziyan's face was a little embarrassed. I passed on a cultivation technique to Shi-Er, but this cultivation technique is divided into 2 parts. So, Shi-Er merging with the dragon soul is just a wedding dress for you? Once she obtains the dragon soul, you will snatch the dragon soul's power from her and step into the paragon's realm? Ling Xiao suddenly understood. That's right. A villain would do anything for strength. Compared to the fake Phoenix Rouge, Ziyan was undoubtedly the real vicious and merciless one. The so-called master-disciple relationship was just a method she used to make use of Shi-Er. I can't defeat the dragon soul, and I can't merge with it. However, I can send you a descendant and let her merge with it. Once she succeeds, wouldn't it be much easier for me to merge with her? Even if Shi-Er failed and died, it would not be a loss to Ziyan at all. And Ziyan's face turned red. Especially when she saw the playful look in Ling Xiao's eyes, she felt an indescribable shame and anger. What can I do? I also don't want to be so cruel. However, the path of immortality is one of mutual deception. Young Miss is very kind, but what is the end result? Shi-Er's cultivation is too low. Even if she merged with the dragon soul, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for her to step into the God-Emperor realm in a short period of time. Give it to me. Before Ziyan could finish speaking, Ling Xiao shook his head and said softly, "Don't worry." He did not care about Ziyan's ruthlessness at all. Previously, he killed her because this woman was too smart. But now, she had already submitted. The more ruthless she was, the more Ling Xiao appreciated her. After all, whether it was Han Qingqiu or Lin Meng, although they had submitted to him, they still had the temperament of a woman of destiny. Even if they had been taught by Ling Xiao to the point that they had turned a little dark, they still had a bottom line in their hearts. There were some things that they could not do. However, Ziyan was different. This woman's cultivation was originally tyrannical, and she was also a villain. She could secretly help Ling Xiao deal with many shady businesses. For example, slaughtering people and exterminating clans. And Ziyan could not refuse at all. Of course, with Ling Xiao's talent and means, perhaps the dragon soul would be more useful if he merged with it. Buzz. With a thought from Ziyan, a divine ability suddenly appeared in Ling Xiao's mind. It was called the Spirit-Devouring Demonic Art. This cultivation technique is a divine ability from the upper realm. It can devour a person's spiritual energy source. However, there are many restrictions and no one can cultivate it. However, it is a supreme cultivation technique for raising slaves. Ziyan wanted to say something but stopped. Ling Xiao had already understood the essence of this cultivation technique. In the path of immortality, there would always be a type of people who liked to reap without sowing and found another way. These people were mostly known as evil cultivators. This spirit-devouring demonic art was not an offensive technique. nor was it used for defense. Instead, it was an extremely evil dual cultivation technique. The cauldron cultivated the lower part, and the master cultivated the upper part. When the cauldron cultivated to a certain level, the master could use the cultivation technique to seize its spiritual energy to aid his own cultivation. It had to be said that this speed was indeed countless times faster than the people of the righteous Tao. After all, the more cauldrons one had, the more spiritual energy one had. However, Ziyan, you are a woman. How do you plan to seize spiritual energy from she-er? Chapter 8:27. Mas. Master, looking at the smile on Ling Zhao's face, Ziyan immediately lowered her head and rubbed the corner of her clothes, appearing a little uneasy. Who would have thought that the dignified Sea Region Emperor, Ziyan, who was known for being overbearing and cruel, would actually reveal such a shy attitude? Women, what is your true form? Why can't I sense the Dragon Clan's bloodline in you? Ling Xiao seemed to have suddenly thought of something and looked at Ziyan curiously. However, a hint of shyness appeared on her pretty face, and a demonic aura suddenly spread around her. Immediately after, Ling Xiao was dumbfounded to see that the Z Emperor, who had dominated the sea region for 300 years, suddenly turned into a white shadow and jumped into his arms. It was actually a demonic cat with a snow-white body, thin and long fur, and golden eyes. There were some thin purple lightning flowing around the demonic cat's body, which was bright and beautiful and added a bit of mystery. So, you have inherited the Thunder Dragon's talent and divine soul, but you are actually a cat? Humph. I am not a cat. My mother's clan is the 9 Lives Link. Ziyan clenched her silver teeth, and a hint of resentment flashed in her eyes. Ling Xiao smiled and gently stroked Ziyan's back. So, you have 9 lives? 9 lives is just an excuse. It's just that although my mother's clan is a demon, they are one of the few demons with powerful divine soul talent. Ziyan opened her small mouth, revealing 2 sharp white teeth, which had a kind of childish fierceness. Divine soul talent? Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, and a hint of deep meaning suddenly appeared on his face. No wonder Ziyan, who was a demon, was proficient in the Tao of formations. It turned out that the talent of this clan was in their divine soul. It was also no wonder that although she did not inherit the Dragon Clan's bloodline, she obtained the Thunder Dragon Clan's divine soul. Interesting. The reproduction of demons is really ever-changing. Then I will also teach you a cultivation technique. It is a peerless soul song. After saying that, a bright soul light suddenly appeared in Ling Zhao's eyes, and a zither song immediately appeared in Ziyan's soul sea. When Ruyu's Wangji zither song? Thank you, my lord. Ziyan's expression turned cold as joy appeared in her eyes. At this moment, she probably didn't expect that Ling Xiao didn't teach her the soul song just to kill her enemies. He also wanted to liven things up. Sect Master, return to the eastern border first. Tell Liang Yi to get ready and wait for my orders. In the end, Ling Xiao held Ziyan in his arms and turned to look at Sect Master Taixien. Yes, Master. The Lord of Taixien bowed and withdrew the clear realm, disappearing on the spot. On the other hand, Ling Xiao wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, he looked up at the sea with a calm expression. He had always been waiting for the mysterious expert who had killed the 8 great god emperors of the Heaven's Mystery Sect to appear. However, until now the sea was still calm, and there was not a trace of an expert's aura. After a long while, the figure of the Lord of Taixien reappeared and shook his head slightly at Ling Xiao. Let's go. Ling Xiao turned around and headed towards the sea god temple. Who could it be? Suddenly, Ling Xiao remembered what Ling Tianlin had said to him before. It seemed that his whereabouts in the past 2 years had never escaped from his father's grasp. Could it be an expert sent by his father? However, killing 8 great god emperors with a wave of his hand, how ridiculous was that? Master? What's wrong? Ziyan raised her head to look at Ling Xiao, her expression somewhat confused. Just now, the 8 great elders of the Heaven's Mystery Sect were killed, but it wasn't my people who killed them. Ling Xiao's indifferent words caused Ziyan's expression to tremble. It wasn't Master's people? Could it be someone from the Saint Sect? I thought it was the Divine Master himself, but it didn't make sense. Forget it, you can follow me from now on. Ling Xiao lowered his head and reached out to pinch Ziyan's pink little nose, smiling gently. With a 9th grade Great Emperor Realm Demon servant following them, even if the Divine Master himself came, it was impossible for him and Ziyan to not notice at all. At that time, Ling Xiao would only need a breath's time to escape into the realm. Yes, I'm the young lady's spirit pet, and also Master's spirit pet. Of course, I have to follow Master. Ziyan stretched out her head and rubbed against Ling Xiao's chest. She no longer had her former majesty. It had been 300 years. She suddenly shed her disguise and no longer had to scheme meticulously and be on guard at all times. Ling Xiao's methods, boldness, and even his identity gave her a great shock. This was especially true for his disposition of strategizing and controlling the world. It was indescribably captivating. It turned out that what I liked was never fame or status. I was more suited to be a comfortable little pet. Where did you hide, Sheer? At the shore of the sea. Master, I'll bring you there later. In the past 300 years, you've plundered many of the sea race's spirit treasures, right? Hee, they're all Master's. A day passed in the blink of an eye. During this day, Ling Xiao did not conceal his whereabouts. His goal was still to lure that mysterious person out. However, even after he finished plundering the sea race's resources and arrived at the shore of southern border, nothing happened. Master? Young Master? In front of the ancient forest, the layers of runes changed and finally disappeared. At this moment, in Lin Shen's forest, a blue-clothed figure was cultivating with her eyes closed. When she felt the sudden fluctuations in the world, she opened her eyes and looked outside the forest with a vigilant expression. In the next instant, a hint of surprise and excitement flashed across her beautiful face. Why are you here? Young Master, leave quickly. My master will kill you. Leave quickly. Cough, cough. Hearing this, Ziyan's face sank. She jumped out of Ling Xiao's arms, transformed into her human form, and stood in front of Sheer. Bert. Sheer's face froze. Her mouth opened slightly, and she was stunned on the spot. What did I just see? Master's original body is a cute kitten? Also, was she nestled in young Master's arms just now? Master, how can you do this? Little traitor. Ziyan was somewhat embarrassed, although she had been using Shi-Er from the beginning. However, her actions just now were too intimate. With Shi-Er's relationship with Ling Xiao, the current her was akin to a cat that stole stars. Master, in the future, I will not care about you and Ling Xiao. Young Master's matters. Ziyan snorted coldly, turned around and walked to the side. As for Shi-Er, she could not suppress the excitement in her heart. She covered her red lips with both hands, and tears gradually surged in her eyes. In the past few days, she had been thinking about Ling Xiao all the time. Although this kind of thinking was somewhat inexplicable, she missed him very much. In the future, you will follow me. Ling Xiao smiled gently, but Shi-Er only nodded with all her might. Tears flowed down her jade-like hands. Dense water vapor filled the air. Several zhang around Shi-Er, there was actually water vapor rising. Good heavens, as expected of the daughter of destiny who comprehended the law of water. There was so much water. The daughter of destiny's feelings have entered her heart. She is willing to submit. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 1,000 luck points and 10,000 villain points. The daughter of destiny has submitted. Congratulations to the host for obtaining an additional reward. Fate forging value, 2%. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a 7th grade medicinal pill, Heavenly Spirit Heart Condensing Pill. Congratulations to the host for obtaining an 8th grade spiritual talisman, Heaven's Sealing Talisman. Hearing the notification from the system, the last trace of hesitation in Ling Zhao's eyes disappeared. Sometimes, when there was an appropriate separation, not only would it not affect feelings, but it would also make them deeper and more reliable. Lovesickness entered the bones, and it was difficult to forget. Leaving was the scenery. Ziyan. Ling Xiao turned to look at Ziyan. A trace of embarrassment flashed across the latter's face, but in the end she returned to her original body under Ling Zhao's playful gaze and was held in his arms. Let's go. Chapter 828. Within the realm, Ling Xiao descended from the sky. At this moment, the entire realm was still filled with the sound of thunder. The world was dark, and endless tribulation lightning fell from the sky. It was like the end of the world. This aura, Shier's face turned pale. Even Ziyan's eyes were filled with surprise. This is my faction, but they are all busy cultivating and breaking through. Shier, this lake is full of spirit energy. You can cultivate here. Ling Xiao smiled warmly as he looked at the large lake beneath him. Thank you, young master. Here are some pills and spirit treasures, and this desolate heaven ancient tablet. Cultivate in peace and call me if you need anything. Desolate heaven ancient tablet. Shier's eyes narrowed, but she didn't say anything in the end. Since the tablet had fallen into Ling Zhao's hands, it meant that Qing Yu was most likely dead. He deserved it. Let's go. Follow me to do something. Ling Xiao turned and headed towards the Sky Palace. Although Shier had submitted, she still didn't know the secret of his demon body. Moreover, Ling Xiao didn't plan to let her know before she merged with the Dragon Soul, in case there were any unforeseen circumstances. Her brother was a saint, so what bad intentions could he have? But if her brother was the sky demon with the dragon soul in hand, you can do whatever you want. In front of the Sky Palace, Ling Xiao hugged Ziyan and looked at the tall and burly demonic figure in front of him. At this moment, he could feel that the last trace of consciousness in the soul-sucking ghost pearl had been cut off. It was obvious that Xiong Huan had completely merged with it. At a certain moment, endless demonic clouds suddenly gathered in the sky. Demonic runes spread out in all directions, and a terrifying and deep demonic intent permeated the world, intimidating everyone. At this moment, Xiong Huan's eyes suddenly opened. A terrifying soul aura suppressed the sky, and Xiong Huan's aura reached the level of a 9th grade divine emperor. Greetings, master. Xiong Huan bowed deeply towards Ling Xiao. He was originally an expert who stood at the top of the world. Although he had lost his vitality and his cultivation was no longer there, it was obvious that as long as he was given time, he would definitely return to his peak and suppress the world. Not bad. Ling Xiao nodded calmly, but his expression was somewhat serious. Xiong Huan, what's the realm above the immortal realm? Undying. Xiong Huan was stunned. Then, he sighed softly and said, My lord, originally, there were no immortal realm experts in our era. According to my guess, it should be the 4 great ancient gods who re-established the order of the heavenly Tao and restricted the cultivation of the myriad of world. However, it's best that my lord doesn't know about this for the time being, because they will sense your existence. You sensed my presence. Ling Xiao frowned and nodded silently. The 4 great ancient gods were omnipotent. By chanting their true names, one could obtain the power of wish. In other words, Ling Zhao's identity was special. Even now, the strongest of the immortal race might still know of his existence. However, the 9 heavens were vast and boundless. Perhaps they would not be able to find Ling Zhao's location in a short period of time. However, if Ling Xiao were to touch some of the restrictions, he might attract endless trouble. For example, chanting his true name, or generating murderous intent towards him. The will of the sky demon contained the power of the heavenly Tao. This thing was ethereal, but no one knew if the ancient gods could see through it. All right, Xiao Bo. In the end, Ling Xiao nodded and did not say anything else. My lord. Xiao Bo's figure descended from the sky and stood in front of Ling Xiao. He patted his robes with both hands and bowed deeply. My lord, is this your new spirit pet? What a cute kitten. Such a kitten must be very soft to hold in your arms, right? This kitten of yours is very obedient. I have seen a kitten beside young Lady Qing Chan before. That kitten is really very wild. Unlike my lord's kitten. You don't say, these two little things look quite similar. As he spoke, Xiao Bo's expression gradually became sluggish. At this moment, he saw Ling Xiao's lips curl into a playful smile. Oh no. It was a feeling of uneasiness. You are that pervert from the Xiao clan? You actually didn't die. At this moment, a trace of doubt also appeared in Ziyan's golden eyes. She turned and shouted coldly. Xiao Bo's body trembled, especially when he sensed the terrifying emperor's power surging around Ziyan. His fat face almost instantly froze. It's you! You are that chinchilla! Back then, Yi Qingchan had been sent down to the lower realm because Xiao Bo had mysteriously disappeared and was framed. At that time, Yi Qingchan had saved Ziyan and placed her in the Glaze ancient pagoda to recover from her injuries. Although she had only met Xiao Bo once, she had heard her young miss mention his origins. She just did not expect that bastard to still be alive. A human suppressed in the Glaze ancient pagoda for 300 years. But his appearance did not change at all? Of course. At this moment, Xiao Bo was undoubtedly even more shocked. At that time, Ziyan had been seriously injured, and her cultivation had fallen several levels lower than his. But in the blink of an eye, this chinchilla's cultivation had reached the 9th stage of the God Emperor realm? Xiao Bo could understand that with Ziyan's bloodline talent, as long as she did not die and cultivated step by step, she would be able to reach that level sooner or later. But he was still panicking. Extremely panicked. Alright. Ziyan, you are skilled in formations. See if you can change the order of time in this realm. Ling Xiao smiled and shook his head, his expression suddenly turning serious. Change time? Master, aren't you thinking too highly of me? Although some experts in the past could seal time with a thought, I am just a god emperor. But I'm just a god emperor. If I had that ability, would I have fallen to such a state? Xiao Bo has comprehended the Tao of time. Ling Xiao's indifferent words caused Ziyan to be slightly stunned. The Tao of time? This bastard actually had such talent? No wonder he could last so long in the Glaze ancient pagoda. It turned out that he had comprehended the most profound Tao of time among the 3,000 great Taos. If that was the case, things would be easier. As long as she enveloped this realm with a formation and placed this bastard as the eye of the formation, she might be able to change the laws and slow down the flow of time. Alright. I will try my best. Ziyan, Xiao Bo is now mine. As if seeing the sinister look in Ziyan's eyes, Ling Xiao reminded her softly. Ling Xiao had seen this woman's ruthlessness before. Moreover, she had enmity with despicable Xiao to begin with. She was afraid that this fellow would suffer some hardships later. Master, I suddenly remembered that I ate something bad last night. My entire body is sore and weak. Why don't? Xiao Bo swallowed hard. Seeing the mockery in Ziyan's eyes, he felt a chill rise from the bottom of his feet to the top of his head. Xiao Bo, since you have comprehended the Tao of time, have you noticed anything strange about the Xingzhou's time? Is it the same in the Azure world? Ling Xiao ignored him and looked into the distance with a frown. If the Xingzhou's time was really sealed by someone, it must be filled with an even greater conspiracy. However, he couldn't figure out how a mere desolate land in the lower realm could threaten those high and mighty immortals and ancient gods. Or could it be that this conspiracy was simply targeted at him? Chapter 829. Time? Strange? Xiao Poli's eyes revealed a hint of confusion, but Ling Xiao only shook his head and sighed softly. Set up the array formation. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure suddenly disappeared from the spot and stepped toward the ancient forest where Meng Yuan was. Just now, when Sect Master Tai Xian and Duguyunjin were fighting, he felt that Meng Yuan's aura had changed. It was obvious that the seal on her body had been broken. And in the end, when Duguyunjin was severely injured, Ling Xiao opened the realm passage and deliberately let Meng Yuan witness the fall of the first divine emissary. As for the conversation between him and Ziyen, he did not hide it at all. After all, the saintess of the sacred sect was now a turtle in a jar. If he did not have enough confidence, Ling Xiao would never let her out. No matter how many secrets she knew, if she could not walk out of the realm, she could only be a canary for others to entertain. However, just as Ling Xiao's figure appeared in front of the ancient forest, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. At this moment, he seemed to have sensed something in his heart and lifted his foot to walk toward the ancient Lin Shun. However, in the spirit spring in Lin Shun's eye, there was a green carp nestled under the withered leaves. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed slightly, and a smile suddenly bloomed on his face. Finally, under his tireless efforts, this realm had begun to nurture life. Especially at this moment, the yin and yang qi circulating around the green carp's body made Ling Xiao have some inexplicable guesses in his heart. When the spirit qi of heaven and earth was at its peak, there would naturally be living beings born. Such living beings were nurtured by heaven and earth, and were different from the reproduction of all living beings. They were true spiritual beings of the great Tao. Green carp, I hope you won't disappoint me. Ling Xiao reached out and took out a 6th-grade pill from the universe ring. He gently crushed it and threw it into the puddle. The green carp immediately darted out from under the withered leaves and swallowed all the spirit qi of the pill before sinking to the bottom of the water and disappearing. Seeing this scene, Ling Xiao smiled and turned to leave. Although the carp's body was spiritual, all living beings had to go through trials and tribulations to grow. Excessive care would instead reduce its providence. The fish had just been born, so its vitality was weak and its Taoist rhyme was unstable. If Ling Xiao interfered too much, it would affect its fate. In the ancient forest, Ling Xiao stopped and looked at the figure sitting cross-legged in the distance with a calm expression. At that moment, the demonic golden light on Meng Yuan's body had completely dissipated. Instead, boundless demonic qi spread out and enveloped the entire area. However, the grief, indignation, and despair on his face had long since vanished. What was left was a wisp of extreme iciness and indifference. This was especially true for her pair of furry ears and the snow-white long tail behind her, which gave her an inexplicable sense of devilish charm. The Fox clan had a human body. Clearly, Meng Yuan was the offspring of a human and a demon. Unlike Bai Jishi, Meng Yuan did not need to transform. Her body was a human, but some parts of her body were no different from those of the Fox clan. However, the more she was like this, the more she exuded a different kind of charm. In the eastern border, although there were several Fox clans, the only truly powerful one was the Qingqiu clan. It was said that the ancestor of this clan was a 9-tailed spirit fox with a noble bloodline and was a primordial demon. Meanwhile, Bai Jishi's bloodline had undergone atavism and awakened the 9-tailed tribe's strongest talent, the Space Tao Law. She became the most dazzling demon in the entire eastern border. It was no wonder that Meng Yuan's Taoist heart was miraculous. It was said that the Fox clan was born intelligent and scheming, while the human clan was known as the most cunning clan of all. The offspring of these two clans would naturally be scheming. However, thinking of the Divine Master's attitude toward Meng Yuan, could she really be the child of the Divine Master and a Fox clan woman? Who could it be? Previously, Ling Xiao had heard from his mother that the 9-tailed tribe's first princess, Bai Jiro, was the Divine Master's servant. She had committed a mistake and was banished. Calculating the time, it had been 300 years. It was in line with what Meng Yuan had said before. The Divine Master had spent hundreds of years refining her divine body. However, if she was Meng Yuan's mother, why would Zhou Yendao trap her in Qingqiu? What was the secret behind this? I know you're awake, Ling Xiao said coldly as he walked over to Meng Yuan. Meng Yuan's expression did not change at all when she heard this. She slowly opened her eyes, revealing a pair of pink pupils. Seeing this pair of eyes, a cute and playful face unconsciously appeared in Ling Xiao's mind. Bai Jishi. As expected? Now, it seemed that all the answers lay with that nine-tailed tribe's first princess. Previously, Ling Xiao had thought of heading to the northern border to find this first princess and ask about the situation. However, his strength was not yet at the level where he could contend against a divine master. Even his faction might not be a match for the Fey emperors of the northern border. Furthermore, although the northern border had the 3 emperors and 10 kings, they had always been united, unlike the sea race. They seemed to submit to Ziyan on the surface, but all had their own schemes. The northern border's Fey race followed the 3 emperors, advancing and retreating together. However, it was unknown what method Zhou Yendao had used to suppress this Fey domain. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, Ling Xiao had never rashly appeared in the northern border. However, now that Ziyan had submitted to him and Xiong Huan had become a rank 9 martial emperor, he had the confidence to sweep through the northern border. You heard what Dugu Yunjin said earlier, right? Tell me, what do you think? Ling Xiao suddenly extended his hand and pinched Meng Yuan's fox ears. The young girl's expression instantly froze, and 2 patches of red appeared on her cheeks. At this moment, Meng Yuan felt her heartbeat accelerate, and her breathing became somewhat ragged. However, unlike before, although she felt shy in her heart, Xia was not as resistant as she had imagined. Even though she now knew the Divine Master's true identity, was there any difference between him and Ling Xiao? This youth was also a demon. Furthermore, his methods were even more cruel and shameless. Neither of them are good people. Meng Yuan snorted coldly. She turned her head with all her might and struggled to break free from Ling Xiao's grasp. Although I don't know why the Divine Master hid his identity from you, at the very least, I am not as hypocritical as him. Think about it carefully. The sacred church deceived the world and killed the innocent. This was especially true for Zhou Yendao. 300 years ago, he even murdered the true Divine Master and secretly searched for demonic cultivators to cultivate. Shouldn't someone like him be killed? Ling Xiao turned around and walked toward the exit of the ancient forest. I know that you must be very curious about your background. Rest assured, I will help you find your mother. At that time, you will understand how filthy and despicable the light that you believe in is. After saying those words, Ling Xiao no longer hesitated. With a thought, the demonic intent that was originally binding Meng Yuan immediately dispersed. His figure gradually disappeared from the ancient forest. Meng Yuan lowered her head and looked at her foxtail. A trace of sorrow gradually appeared in her eyes. She never expected that the path that she had pursued for 20 years would be completely wrong. Although her Dao heart had long been shattered by Ling Xiao, she still felt sorrowful and depressed at this moment. Why? Why did you do this to me? Master, did you really just train me to become a sharp sword in your hand to kill people? Using my demonic body to kill demons and evils? What a vicious heart! What a cruel path! At this moment, the last trace of obsession in Meng Yuan's heart finally dispersed. Ling Xiao. Meng Yuan inexplicably raised her head and looked in the direction that the youth had disappeared. Ling Xiao stopped in his tracks and slowly turned his head. What's wrong? The Divine Master is in seclusion. Chapter 830. The Divine Master is in seclusion? Then have you seen a girl dressed in green? Ling Xiao frowned slightly and turned to look at Meng Yuan. He did not look surprised at all. Ming Yuan's state of mind, just like her person, was completely broken. The light that she had been pursuing did not seem to be that pure anymore. Based on Ming Yuan's personality, she must be confused and confused. However, there was one thing that was certain. Her faith had collapsed. When a person found out that the things they believed in were fake, they would either die or go completely crazy. Ming Yuan did not die. This meant that she still had an obsession in her heart. Perhaps what she really wanted to do at this moment was not to figure out her background, but to ask her beloved master why he was doing this. Never. Ming Yuan's tone was extremely calm. However, Ling Xiao felt a heavy pressure under her calmness. I got it. I've already removed the devil will from your body. You can cultivate here or you can walk around. No one will harm you here. Demonic aura spread out in the sky above the ancient forest. Ling Xiao's figure had already disappeared. He had already guessed Ming Yuan's background. What he needed to do now was to head to the northern border and find the first princess of the nine-tailed clan, Bai Jiro. He needed to figure out her relationship with the Divine Master and kill the second Divine Envoy. The Divine Master was in seclusion. If he was not breaking through, he would be seriously injured. As a villain, Ling Xiao would not rely on luck. Therefore, he would just treat it as if he was breaking through. What Ling Xiao needed to do next was to remove the sacred sex wings as soon as possible. Then, he would find a way to instigate the northern border demon sovereigns to work for him. Of course, if Yi Qingchan could awaken her memories, it would be best if she could reveal the Divine Master's true identity. When the Divine Master came out of seclusion, he would be very happy to find that he had become the enemy of the entire world. My lord! When Ling Xiao appeared in front of the heavenly palace, Ziyan and Xiao Pa had been waiting for him for a long time. My lord, we did not disappoint you. I've already taken control of the temporal laws of this realm, as per your instructions. Now or one day in this realm is only equivalent to 6 hours in the outside world. Xiao Popper stood straight, puffing out his chest, his expression extremely solemn. Well done, double shadow flower. Ling Xiao nodded his head indifferently. Then, the two figures of stacked shadow and stacked shadow immediately flew over and appeared before the three of them. At this moment, Floey's aura was becoming more and more terrifying. Even the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was devoured by her. It was terrifying. First-grade Divine King. As for Stack Shadow, his cultivation had also broken through. Currently, he had already stepped into the God Emperor realm. He was a rank 1 God Emperor. On the path of cultivation, wealth, companionship, dharma, and land were all important. With their talents, they were all at the peak of this world. What did Ling Xiao lack the most? Cultivation materials, of course. To put it bluntly, even a pig would be able to take human form in less than a year if it cultivated under the nourishment of the 10 dragon veins in this realm and had a daily supply of Tier 5 and Tier 6 pills. My lord! The two of you, bring the secret guards to the southern border and find a woman called Nine Nether. Also, find out about the current situation in the northern border and the various geniuses. What was that saying again? Before the troops and horses move, the provisions move first. On the path to immortality, strength was indeed the key to controlling everything. However, when the strength of two parties was similar, information was also crucial. Floey's true form was the sky demon swallowing dragon. At the crucial moment, she could intimidate thousands of demons. With her and Stacked Shadow going together, it would be absolutely safe. As for Xiong Huan and Ziyan, although the sea was now under Ling Xiao's control, there were still some things that needed to be done. My lord! However, just as Ling Xiao's voice fell, Xiao Popper suddenly took a step forward and frowned. My lord, I think this is inappropriate. Oh! Ling Xiao raised his eyebrows slightly, a faint smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. What's inappropriate? I've heard that the northern border is the demon's territory. Most of the demons there are fond of killing people. It's too dangerous for Flowy and Stacked Shadow to go. In order to ensure their safety, I'm willing to go with them." At this moment, Xiao Popper's expression was especially grave. If not for knowing his character, Ling Xiao might have believed him. "Speak human language. My lord. Recently, my realm has reached a bottleneck. I want to go out and find a sense of danger." Xiao Popper's expression fell, but Ling Xiao didn't say anything else. He waved his hand, indicating for Xiao Popper and the others to leave. "Thank you, my lord. Thank you, my lord." Xiao Popper was wild with joy and left with Stacked Shadow. Only when he turned around did Ling Xiao see that on his broad and fat back, there were 2 bloody scars that almost exposed the bones. The scars were several feet long, and the flesh had split open, showing a kind of charred black color. Ling Xiao gave Ziyan a deep look. This woman was truly vicious and merciless. Most likely, Xiao Popper was in a hurry to leave because he was afraid he would die at Ziyan's hands. "Of the 10 sea races, are there any you can trust? My lord, are you thinking of, we're about to leave the southern border, but this territory still needs an obedient sea emperor." Ling Xiao smiled warmly and looked down at the heavenly palace. The current realm was already lush and verdant, with ancient trees forming a forest. Powerful auras stirred the wind and clouds, and spiritual radiance whistled through the air. "My lord, the most obedient of the 10 races has already been wiped out by you." Ziyan smiled bitterly. Then, she seemed to have thought of something. "Oh, there is one more clan. The Blood Shark Royal Clan was one of the first clans to submit to me. The leader of this clan can be considered my servant." "The Blood Shark Clan? Then he'll be fine." Ling Xiao nodded with a smile and waved at Ziyan. The latter immediately transformed into her true form and threw herself into Ling Xiao's arms. But at this moment, Ziyan's eyes flickered with hesitation. "If you have something to say, say it. My lord, where did Shi go? How did you lure Wenruyu into the trap back then? Also, Dugu Yunjin is a wily old fox. Don't tell me you don't know what Dao law Shi comprehended." Ling Xiao shook his head with a smile, but Ziyan was clearly stunned. "Shi? Ice Dao law?" The reason she had taken Shi in as her servant was largely because the Dao law he comprehended made Ziyan feel somewhat close to him. But what did this have to do with Wenruyu and Dugu Yunjin? "Wait, Miss Qin-chan." Suddenly, Ziyan felt an inexplicable chill in her heart. She raised her head and looked at the calm and determined face in front of her. She only felt her entire body turn cold, and the chill seeped into her bones. In that instant, she realized that Ling Xiao was the sky demon, a true taboo of the 9 heavens. Therefore, compared to him, Ziyan could at most be considered an avenger and not a villain. Perhaps in Ling Xiao's eyes, there was no one in this world that he could not use. Dao companions, servants, and even brothers. Suddenly, a demonic wind blew in the vast sea region. However, the current sea region was no longer as noisy as it was in the past. It was so calm that it was frightening. The flood dragon humanoid race had been exterminated, and the various young masters had mysteriously disappeared. Even the Sea Emperor Palace was empty. In a short 2 months, the entire sea region had been turned upside down. But strangely, none of the royal clans dared to take advantage of the situation to cause trouble. Not to mention whether Ziyan had died or not, if there was an enemy that even the Sea Emperor could not resist, who in the sea region would dare to fight against? Only when Ling Xiao's figure descended from the sky and landed in front of a blood-colored palace did Ziyan transform into her human form and follow him into the palace. "How dare you? Who? It's the Sea Emperor!" Chapter 831. Quick! Report to the Shark Lord that the Sea Emperor has arrived. In front of the Blood Shark Palace, several Blood Shark clansmen scrambled to run away. After a while, a figure flew out of the palace and appeared in front of Ling Xiao and the Blood Shark Lord. However, looking at the purple emperor standing behind Ling Xiao with a respectful expression, the Blood Shark clan lord swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. F***CK? What does the purple emperor mean by this? I don't know how to do this anymore. Should I greet the purple emperor first or this young man first? Gulp. You're the Blood Shark clan lord? Ling Xiao's expression was gentle and his tone was calm. Instantly, the Blood Shark clan lord's uneasiness subsided. You can call me Little Shark. The Blood Shark clan lord bowed humbly. May I know why young master and the Sea Emperor have come? To bestow upon you a fortune. At the same time, in the depths of the sea, countless experts flew out of the sky edge ancient island and headed towards the southern border. Guzhen, dressed in black, stood at the peak of the Thousand Ghost Mountain and looked at the sky. Early this morning, he received a message from Ling Xiao, ordering him to reorganize the demon Dao in the southern border, unify the various tribes, and dominate this border with the Blood Shark clan lord. Although Guzhen didn't know what Ling Xiao's intention was, especially since the first divine envoy was rumored to still be in the sea, he didn't dare to ask. What? Young master wants me to unify the sea? In the Blood Palace, the Blood Shark clan lord was stunned and knelt on the ground. Young master, how can Little Shark be the overlord of the sea? If I say you can, you can. Xiong Huan, Chen Qingshan. Ling Xiao smiled calmly. Below the great hall, 3 silhouettes broke through the air. In particular, the tall demonic figure covered in armor made the Blood Shark clan's clan lord's heart skip a beat. Great demon! Although Xiong Huan's body didn't have the slightest trace of life force at this moment, the demonic intent that lingered in the heavens and earth made people unconsciously have a desire to submit to it. Help the Blood Shark clan master unify the sea region. Those who submit will live, and those who defy will be killed. I will have Guzhen join you. Ling Xiao cast a meaningful glance at Dream Demon, who was standing beside Chen Qingshan. The two of them had their fingers intertwined and were leaning against each other, appearing extremely intimate. Yes, my lord. The 3 of them bowed, but Ling Xiao turned his gaze to the Blood Shark clan patriarch. Open your divine soul. Yes, my lord. Although the patriarch of the Blood Shark clan was somewhat conflicted, he didn't dare to disobey. Didn't you see that even the Violet Emperor had submitted? I'm afraid that as soon as I reveal my intentions, the Blood Shark clan will be wiped out. Buzz. As the wisp of soul consciousness entered the sea, the Blood Shark clan patriarch's body trembled for a moment before calming down. Ling Xiao, on the other hand, walked out of the hall. After you're done, come to the northern frontier and find me. Yes. The 4 of them watched Ling Xiao disappear. Then, they stood up and exchanged looks. Shark clan master, which clan should we start from? Let's start with the Emperor Whale clan. The Emperor Whale clan and the Blood Shark clan were mortal enemies of the sea. If it weren't for Ziyen intimidating the other clans, the war between the 2 clans wouldn't have stopped. Now, the Blood Shark clan had an opportunity to become an emperor, and they had the help of a 9th-rank divine emperor. If they didn't show off now, when would they? My lord, why did you leave Xiong Huan in the sea? Wouldn't it be more convenient for me to do this? In the sky above the sea, Ling Xiao slowly stepped out and headed north. Then, with a wave of his hand, a golden carriage with 9 dragons appeared. Ling Xiao carried Ziyen in his arms as he sat in the golden carriage and flew through the clouds. You are indeed more suitable to suppress the Sea Clan, but Xiong Huan is more important here. Now that Xiong Huan had fused with the soul-sucking ghost pearl, his life was temporarily saved. However, if he wanted that wisp of soul consciousness to not be destroyed, he had to continuously devour souls. Therefore, Ling Xiao left him in the sea to clean up the battlefield. This was also a kind of cultivation. Ziyen nestled in Ling Xiao's arms and didn't say anything. With Ling Xiao's scheming, he indeed didn't need her to come up with a plan. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Northern border region. At this moment, Xiao Jiu and the other two were standing at the foot of a tall mountain, looking up at the mountain peak. The mountain was tens of thousands of feet tall, with a flourishing ancient forest and spiritual fog covering it. Waves of demonic aura spread out from the mountain and evolved into a strange phenomenon. Thousands of rays of immortal light shot into the sky and dyed the sky red. Vaguely, there was an extremely terrifying heat that suppressed heaven and earth and intimidated all living things. It should be here. A smile flashed across Folded Shadow's face. She had asked around for a long time but had never heard of the 9 underworld. However, a demon king had appeared out of nowhere in the northern border. He had gathered the experts of the demon race and declared himself the king. The demons called her the Ghost King. She was a mysterious and cruel beauty. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. Xiaoju stepped out and was about to head to the mountain peak. At this moment, several terrifying demonic auras suddenly swept out from the foot of the mountain. Immediately after, 10 experts of the demon clan with different appearances descended from the sky and stopped Xiaojiu and the other two. Who are you? Why did you barge into my 9 underworlds mountain? 9 underworlds mountain? Xiaojiu and the other two exchanged glances. It seemed that they weren't wrong. We are here on young master's orders to pay a visit to the Qingyu. Xiaoju spoke of his intentions. What a joke. I really like to show off. However, this 9 underworlds is someone by young master's side. She is most likely a woman. What can I do? Of course I have to flatter her. Young master? What young master? Human, let me give you a piece of advice. Leave now and you can still live. Otherwise, why are you talking nonsense with him? Hua Hua's face turned cold. She suddenly stepped out, and a wisp of dragon aura surged around her, instantly suppressing the 10 demons. Although her cultivation was only at the first divine king realm, the suppression of her bloodline was far more terrifying than her cultivation realm. Especially these wild demons. They didn't have any bloodline to speak of. Now that they saw the dragon aura for the first time, and it was the true dragon saint aura, the fear in their hearts could be imagined. In a short span of time, 9 of the 10 demons actually vomited blood and knelt on the ground, trembling. Only one god the archdemon looked fearful. He took a few steps back and rushed toward the mountain peak angrily. Lady Hua Hua, what you are doing is not appropriate. Xiao Jiu's expression changed. Ling Xiao most likely wouldn't blame Hua Hua for killing people. However, the 3 of them were traveling together. Once his lord blamed them. It seems like I will definitely be the one to take the blame. What's wrong? Hua Hua's beautiful eyes were playful as she looked at Xiao Jiu coldly. 9 underworlds? Isn't she the demon remnant soul from before? She was sent to the north border as a tool after his lord reconstructed her body? What right does a mere lower domain demon have to compare with my noble true dragon bloodline? Even if, in his lord's eyes, we are all tools, I am also a tool that is nobler than her. In that case, what is there to be humble about? TSK. Chapter 832. I think that since we are all young master's servants, we should unite and help each other, scram. Before penniless Xiao could finish speaking, Floey had already shouted angrily and walked towards the peak of the mountain. Who is young master's servant? I am young master's servant. Oh! Xiao Tong's chubby face trembled slightly as he obediently stepped aside. How dare you trespass on my 9 nether mountain? You sure have guts. However, just as the 3 of them were about to step out, a feminine voice came from the sky. Immediately after, Xiao Tao and the others felt a trace of extremely profound Dao law charm swimming around their bodies. A petite and dainty figure suddenly broke through the air, the dagger in her hand stabbing towards Huahua's heart. A wisp of demonic aura? So what? Who in the entire northern borderline would not dare to offend Bai Jishi? You're courting death. Huahua's face trembled as demonic aura surged around her, forming a demonic mouth that devoured the mysterious Tao aura. Bai Jishi's eyes narrowed as she suddenly disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already 100 feet away. Beside him, 3 God Emperor Great Demons appeared. One of them was the God Emperor Great Demon who had just escaped. King Bai, we were patrolling the mountain as you instructed. We didn't expect to be injured by this woman's dragon aura. How dare you? Bai Jishi placed her hands on her waist as she glared at Huahua and the others. Little girl, who are you? Xiao Tong stepped forward and stood in front of the 2 of them before Huahua could speak. Leave this to me, Miss Huahua, just you wait and see. Although this little girl's technique was strange and seemed to be able to freeze space and travel through it. However, her strength was still too low. How dare a divine overlord act so presumptuously in front of Father Xiao? If he didn't act tough now, when would he? You damn fatty, you look so wretched. Why did you trespass on my 9 nether mountain? Huff 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 huff. Bai Jishi pouted. She only glanced at Xiao Bao, then looked at Huahua. This woman is not bad looking. Her figure is not bad either. What's the big deal? 9 Nether said that in 10 years, I will also have a good figure. Fatty? Wretched? Xiaopa was stunned, and then he was slightly embarrassed. What he hated the most was people calling him fatty. Huff huff huff. Phew 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 phew. Little girl, are you 9 Nether? Poverty Xiao forcefully suppressed the rage in his heart and asked in a cold voice. No. Bai Jishi shook her head, her face gradually turned cold. Speak. Why are you looking for 9 Nether? Now that 9 Underworld Mountain was growing stronger by the day, there were already 7 demon thearchs. Although most of them had come for 9 Nether's beauty, they had also caused an undercurrent in the northern border that had been peaceful for hundreds of years. This was especially so for the original 10 great royal clans, who viewed 9 Underworld's mountain as a thorn in their flesh. They could not wait to pull it out. Were these people here to cause trouble in the 9 Underworld's mountain? Not the 9 Underworlds? Then what the hell are you yelling at me for? Little girl, today I will discipline you on behalf of your family's elders. As soon as he heard that it was not 9 Nether, Xiao Pao immediately felt relieved. He stepped forward and rushed towards Bai Jishi with his long sword in hand. It was impossible to kill him. After all, she was Miss 9 Nether's subordinate. However, it was necessary to teach her a lesson and let her know what rules were. Boundless Tao light bloomed in the void. Xiao Pao slashed with his sword, and 100-foot-long crack appeared in the void. Thousands of spiritual lights converged into a sharp blade, piercing through the clouds and crushing heaven and earth. Bai Jishi's expression changed. Suddenly, an afterimage flashed in front of her, and the fatty, who was hundreds of feet away, suddenly appeared in front of her. If you dare to hurt me, my big brother Ling Xiao will not let you off. Helpless, Bai Jishi used Ling Xiao's name as usual. When he heard the words Big Brother Ling Xiao, the ferocity on Poverty Xiao's face instantly froze. Then, the spiritual light around him disappeared, and the Tao laws collapsed. In a panic, Bai Jishi fiercely swung her dagger, which collided with Poverty Xiao's long sword. Puff! Following that, a shocking scene appeared. Poverty Xiao, a dignified god emperor, was sent flying the moment they collided. He fell to the ground, blood spilling from his mouth and nose. Gulp! Bai Jishi was not the only one stunned. Even Huahua and Dain were stunned. Could it be that this little girl was hiding her cultivation level? When did I become so powerful? Bai Jishi looked down at the divine dagger in her hand in a daze. She could not react in time. However, at this moment Poverty Xiao got up from the ground and shouted at Bai Jishi, "So powerful! You are so powerful!" Huff 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 huff. Huff 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 huff. Huahua and Dain looked at each other, and the confusion in their eyes disappeared. I am not a human, but this Poverty Xiao is a real dog. Hepush! Humph! I told you, I am very powerful. Now you know, right? Huff 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 huff. Although Bai Jishi did not know what had happened, when she heard the enemy's praise, she almost turned into a nine-tailed beast. But this damn fatty was really wretched. He actually copied her words. Humph. Did you just call Lord Ling Xiao Big Brother? Hua Hua raised her head and looked at Bai Jishi calmly. Among these people, she had followed Ling Xiao the longest, but she had never heard that he had a sister. However, even if she was his godsister, Hua Hua and the others could not afford to offend her. Humph. What, you know my brother too? To tell you the truth, the King Yu that you are going to meet is just my brother's servant girl, and I am my brother's sister. Humph. Bai Jishi hugged her arms and raised her head. Her face was full of pride. We are here on young master's orders. May I know where the King Yu is now? Folded Shadow smiled faintly and said, What? You are my brother's people? The pride on Bai Jishi's face did not last long. Her pink eyes suddenly flashed with excitement. Where is my brother? Is my brother here? Young master should be here soon. Dain shook his head, and Bai Jishi's figure suddenly disappeared on the spot. After a breath, she reappeared in the air. Where will my brother come from? Master should be coming from the south. Destitute Xiao bowed, and there was no longer a trace of arrogance on his face. Damn! That moment just now was the closest he had ever been to death. It was not that Bai Jishi's methods were terrifying, but his lord was too terrifying. The few of you, bring them to Nine Nether. With that, Bai Jishi no longer hesitated and rushed towards the south. Brother! You are finally here. Jishi missed you so much. The remaining 9 Nether Mountain God Emperors looked at each other. King Bai, they only mentioned a name, and you let them go up the mountain? Does that mean that if anyone comes and says that they are Lord Ling Zhao's friends, the 9 Nether Mountain will welcome them with great hospitality? Everyone, please follow me. In the end, the 3 God Emperors did not dare to disobey. They turned around and led Hua Hua and the others to the mountain peak. The King Yu's methods were terrifying, and the rules of the mountain were strict. However, the most frightening demon in the 9 Nether Mountain was still King Bai. There was no other reason. It was because this girl had a fickle personality and was extremely domineering. If anyone provoked her, they wouldn't die, but they would be tortured endlessly, and there were many different ways to torture them. Chapter 833. When the 6 of them reached the palace, the 9 Serene Mountain God Emperor turned to look at Flowey and the other 2. Please wait for a moment. The Dark King is in seclusion. I will pass the message now. Thank you for your trouble. Xiao Popper's expression was amiable and his attitude was humble. However, it caused the 3 great God Emperors to have a hint of mockery in their eyes. This fatty really knows how to act. After a while, there was a sudden surge of heat in the hall. A graceful and beautiful figure emerged from the void and appeared in front of everyone. Are you the young master's men? After 2 years, 9 Nether's cultivation had reached the realm of a 5th stage God Emperor. There were flames lingering around her. However, the flames weren't red in color. Instead, it was a dark purple color. It was obvious that she had completely awakened her memories. The 9 Serene Phoenix was originally from the North Borders Emperor clan. Before the clan was exterminated, the 3 demon emperors didn't dare to provoke them. However, it was a pity that such a huge clan was exterminated in a single night. Only 9 Nether, the proud daughter of the Serene Phoenix clan, managed to escape with a wisp of her divine soul. Of course, if she didn't meet Ling Xiao, she wouldn't be able to recover her current realm in 10 years, let alone 2 years. What's more, a female supporting character with this kind of setting would most likely end up dying for the Child of Destiny. We are here under the orders of the Lord Ling Xiao to help the Dark King unify the North Border. Xiaopa stood up and bowed to 9 Nether. Xiaopa might be able to fight against a 5th stage God Emperor with his battle strength. However, he was just a slave. How could his status be compared to the beautiful women around the Lord? Do you have proof? Nine Nether's face was cold. Her eyes seemed to be burning with anger. It made people feel oppressed. The young master has instructed us to find the Dark King and pass this voice transmission talisman to her. Xiaopa handed over a voice transmission talisman respectfully. Nine Nether didn't hesitate and poured her spiritual energy into the talisman. Buzz. Young Master Nine Nether's face was filled with excitement. Since the last time Bai Jishi wasted her only voice transmission talisman, Nine Nether hasn't heard from her young master for nearly a year. Of course, with Nine Nether's current power, it wasn't impossible for him to inquire about Ling Zhao's whereabouts. However, her identity was special. She was the archenemy of the saint. Once his relationship with the young master was exposed, it would inevitably bring disaster to him. This was the reason why Ling Zhao had only given her a sound transmission talisman. Although people like Nine Nether and Yi Qinchan, who had been recognized by the system as destined to submit, wouldn't betray Ling Zhao didn't know if they were in danger because they didn't have a soul seal to control them. If they fell into the hands of a divine master, with that person's strength, he might be able to find some clues from them. Nine Nether, did you see Hua and the others? Southern border, high up in the sky. Ling Zhao reclined on the golden chariot with his hair hanging down. He held a jade cup in one hand and gently sipped the wine in it while stroking Ziyan's back with the other hand. You are more familiar with northern border. Think of a way to gather the geniuses of the various demon races. The more lively, the better. I will be there soon. Ling Zhao put down the talisman and drank the wine in the cup. Now that the divine master was in seclusion, it was a great opportunity for him to unify the four borders. Even if Zhou Yendao had truly entered the Venerate realm, Ling Zhao didn't believe that he couldn't kill one person with the power of billions of living beings in the four borders. After all, regardless of whether one was a Yuan Venerate or a Venerate, their spiritual power was limited. Of course, this war would definitely be cruel and bloody. Just thinking about it made one's scalp tingle. But so what? Everyone in the world would die, and he would control the world alone. Ascending to the upper realm would also be a great creation. When the demonic clouds in the distance suddenly stirred, Ling Zhao stood up from the golden chariot and looked into the distance. Ziyan also opened her eyes, but her expression was a little tired and not worried at all. Not to mention that there were many experts in Ling Zhao's territory, as long as the one who came was not Zhou Yendao, who in the Shengzhou could be her match. The first emperor of the five borders was already dead. Except for Dao Master Taixian, Ziyan didn't fear anyone. What? The three emperors of northern border? The great demon with a trace of dragon blood? Ziyan didn't know how much dragon blood that demon emperor had, but half of it was the blood of the thunder dragon in her body. Greetings, my lord. Until the golden chariot stopped in the air. Ling Zhao's lips curled into a smile. In the sky, nearly 100 figures knelt down. At the head of the group was Liang Yi, dressed in a green robe. His eyes were dim, but his expression was gentle. At this moment, his aura had also reached the level of a god king. He was at the level of a god king. The 100 people behind him were mostly divine overlords, and a few of them had a trace of luck. However, what truly moved Ling Zhao was not the cultivation of these people. Instead, it was the undisguised ferocious aura on their bodies. Obviously, these 100 people had gone through real life and death situations, stepping through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. People like them should either not provoke them or kill them on the spot. Otherwise, they would do anything to kill you. That's right. Get up. Ling Zhao smiled gently, but his eyes were a little dim. With Liang Yi's status, he should be the one who stood at the top of the world. But he was willing to gamble with his cultivation for the sky demon and step into endless reincarnation. Although he was a first-grade divine king now, he couldn't completely hide the trace of lethargy on him. Let's go. Let's see what surprises the northern border has. Ling Xiao sat on the golden chariot again, holding Ziyan in his arms, and walked towards the 9th underworld mountain. Behind him, 100 people formed a formation. They did not make the slightest sound as they followed closely behind Liang Yi to protect their master. The sky was gloomy, and layers of dark clouds covered the surroundings. Everywhere they passed, all living beings bowed their heads, and mortals knelt down. Only some powerful cultivators had fear in their eyes. The Shengzhou continent had changed. At the same time, in the northern border, more and more powerful cultivators stepped out of their clans and gathered at a certain place. Today, the 9th underworld mountain suddenly sent out invitations, inviting all the geniuses of the northern border to gather at the 9th underworld mountain to witness the 9th underworld mountain's master, the Ghost King, becoming the 11th demon king of the northern border. Such an action was arrogant and presumptuous. So many masters of the royal clans had rushed to the sacred mountain, requesting to meet the demon emperor to fight the 9th underworld mountain together. Of course, most of the demon clans were curious. They wanted to see with their own eyes where the seductive Ghost King, who was rumored to be less than 100 years old, got the confidence to proclaim himself as the demon king. Everyone knew that the northern border demon clans had always been united. Although there were occasional disputes between the clans, there had never been a great war. That was because the entire northern border had submitted to the 10,000 demon sacred mountain, which was also known as the 10,000 demon sacred land. On the sacred mountain, there was a green flood dragon with incredible cultivation and dragon blood. It was called the Green Dragon Emperor by the demon clans. There was a centipede that was born with lethal poison and could slaughter thousands of miles away. It was called the Poisonous Centipede Emperor. There was an elephant that was born with divine power and had a jade face and golden eyes. It was called the White Elephant Emperor. The 3 demon clans were sworn brothers, and together they ruled over the northern border. The position of Demon King had always been bestowed by the 3 demon emperors. Who would have thought that a mere wild demon would dare to overstep it? Chapter 834. A storm was brewing in the northern border, and undercurrents were surging. The demon clan, which had been peaceful for hundreds of years, was suddenly in turmoil. Although Nine Nether was mysterious and ferocious, the 10 great demon kings were not afraid of her. However, it was said that the little princess of the 9-tailed tribe, by Jishi, was behind King Yu. She was known as the most talented person in the Green Hill tribe. It could be said that there was no one in the entire northern frontier who didn't know about this woman. She was born with Tao laws, and her blood was vigorous. She had the ancestral awakening bloodline of the primitive demons. As long as such a demon did not die, she would become the new hope of the demon clan in the northern border. Especially when she was born, it was said that immortal radiance spread for 30,000 miles, and her Tao was formed naturally. The 3 great demon emperors arrived at the same time and fought to take her in as a disciple. However, they were all rejected by the ancestor of the Green Hill tribe. Even so, no tribe in the northern border dared to provoke her. The 1,000-demon sacred mountain stood in the center of the northern border. The mountain was tall, and the ancient trees on it reached the sky. The spiritual chi was like a tide, and there was an immortal aura surging and overflowing. Usually, only the 3 great demon emperors and their servants stayed on the mountain to cultivate. However, there were countless great demon emperors roaring on the sacred mountain today, as if they were arguing. Dragon Emperor! That King Yu is of unknown origin, and his behavior is unreasonable. He doesn't care about us at all. A god emperor with a human body and an eagle head shouted angrily in a stone hall at the peak of the mountain. This demon was the leader of the 10 great demon kings, and was known as the Golden Condor King. Although he wasn't a great demon, anyone related to the primordial era in the Xingzhou wasteland could be said to have a terrifying background. King Yu? Have you found out about his background? An elder with a green face and dragon scales sat on the main seat of the hall. He was wearing a green robe and was wearing a green robe. There was a clear radiance flowing around him like a primordial mist, and it was mysterious. No. Dragon Emperor. This King Yu seems to have appeared in the northern border out of nowhere. His methods are extremely ruthless. Although his cultivation is not high, he has 2 7th-grade divine emperors under him. The Golden Condor King's voice was filled with anger. The Nine Nether Mountain was the boundary between the Golden Condor tribe and the Green Hill tribe. It was just that the Green Hill foxes had never liked fighting, so to outsiders, Nine Phantom Mountain was the territory of the Golden Condors. Now, the Ghost King, who had appeared out of nowhere, had taken over the mountain. It was undoubtedly a slap to the Golden Condor King's face. Therefore, he joined forces with the other demon kings to eliminate 9 underworlds in the name of ignoring the Demon Emperor. But Baizhishi's identity was special. Even the Golden Condor King did not dare to act rashly without the approval of the Shifter Emperor. Where did he come from? Could it be that he's not from the Northern Frontier Demon Clan? The Blue Dragon Emperor pondered for a moment before shaking her head. I heard that Zhishi is by her side now? That's right. Looks like the Qingqiu clan isn't as aloof from worldly affairs as everyone says. The Golden Condor King snorted coldly, clearly enraged. No one would believe that Baizhishi appeared in the 9 secluded mountain without the instructions of the Qingqiu clan. However, the Golden Condor King could not figure out why this girl needed to rely on others if she wanted to have her own power. With the support of the 3 demon emperors, no one in the northern frontier would dare to act rashly. However, the Golden Condor King had gone to the Qingqiu clan to ask for an explanation from the 9-tailed Fox Queen. Who knew that the Demon Empress would deny that she had anything to do with Baizhishi and say that she knew nothing about it? Wasn't that infuriating? Alright, the demon tribe of the northern frontier is united. The more powerful we have, the better we can control this land. Why, have you forgotten my will? The Blue Dragon Emperor looked deeply at the Golden Condor King, causing him to tremble and kneel on the ground with a plop. I wouldn't dare. The Golden Condor King was sweating profusely as a chill ran down his spine. Although he was also a peerless demon king who was an 8th-grade divine emperor, he had no room to struggle in front of this person. In fact, there was a rumor in the northern frontier that when the northern frontier was in chaos, there was a royal clan that was unwilling to stay under the 1,000-demon sacred mountain. In the end, the Blue Dragon Emperor had personally arrived. She transformed into her true form and directly swallowed the entire demonic beast into her stomach. Since then, no one in the northern frontier dared to go against the will of this demon emperor. However, it is not an easy task to become a king. You are not allowed to interfere, but you can send the elders and disciples of your clan to test him. If this ghost king really has the qualifications to become a king, then there will be 11 kings in the northern border in the future. If he is just a despicable person who wants to take advantage of the situation, I will send people to kill him. After saying that, the Blue Dragon Emperor turned around and walked towards the back of the stone hall. Yes, the Golden Condor King and the others remained on the ground and did not get up. Only when there was no more dragon power in the hall did they wipe off the cold sweat on their heads and leave. At the same time, at the peak of the 1,000-demon mountain, a graceful figure in a golden dress with fiery red hair stood with her hands behind her back. Her feet were as white as snow, and her hair was as red as fire. Although her face could not be seen, the tight long dress showed off her perfect figure. Her exposed skin was snow-white and sparkling, and it seemed to be emitting immortal light. However, what was strange was that there were green and red totems on the girl's neck and wrists. It was very demonic. Hearing the footsteps behind her, the girl turned around, revealing an indescribably beautiful face. Her eyes were like glass, her nose was straight, and there seemed to be a mountain peak under her golden robe. She was very majestic. Beside her, there was an endless amount of blood chi gushing out. Her Taoist rhymes were natural, and the blue sky lost its color. She did not look old, but even in front of the Blue Dragon Emperor, she was not nervous at all. Instead, she had a tinge of arrogance. Even her frown and smile contained an ancient and domineering aura. Divine Ancestor. In the next instant, a shocking scene appeared. The Blue Dragon Emperor suddenly bowed deeply to the girl in front of her. Her expression was respectful, and there was not the slightest bit of awkwardness. "Is something the matter?" The red-haired girl raised her eyebrows slightly, and a trace of playfulness flashed in her glassy eyes. "Divine Ancestor, we have found the whereabouts of the sacred sect's second divine envoy. He is now on Guewu Mountain, thousands of miles to the east. This divine envoy seems to be related to that prophet." The Blue Dragon Emperor, the ruler of the northern border, was acting so lowly at this moment. If this scene was seen by others, they would definitely be frightened to the point of having a heart attack. "Humph, it's just a stinky toad. But you, old thing, actually submitted to the human race. You are a disgrace to the demon race." The red-haired girl snorted coldly, but the Blue Dragon Emperor's expression changed drastically. She did not even dare to breathe loudly. "Divine Ancestor, please calm down. At that time, we were forced by the situation." "Humph. Did anything big happen in the northern border recently? Have you found the Taoist law demon that I asked you to find for me?" The red-haired girl raised her hand and gently stretched her muscles and bones, revealing her fair waist and a patch of green-red totems on her back. Even her raised arms were covered by all kinds of colorful totems. They looked like demonic shadows, but also like ghosts and demons. Only her jade-like hands were white, flawless, and soft as if they were boneless. "Divine Ancestor, the prodigies of the demon race are strong in their blood chi and physical bodies. The Taoist law is really hard to find." The Blue Dragon Emperor smiled awkwardly. There was some doubt in her old eyes. This divine ancestor was really strange. Not only was her talent heaven-defying, but her actions were also strange. Looking for the Taoist law demon? Could it be that the divine ancestor was planning to recruit disciples for an expedition? However, almost all the experts in the northern border who had comprehended the Taoist law had mysteriously disappeared. In the Blue Dragon Emperor's eyes there was only, "Wait, Bai Jishi. Humph. Really hard to find? I'll give you one more month. If you can't find the Taoist law demon, you and those two old things can go to the human race and find him." The red-haired girl looked into the distance. There was an indescribable vicissitude in her glassy eyes. "Divine Ancestor. I know a demon that was born with the Taoist law. He is where the luck of the demon race lies." Chapter 835. The Destiny of the Demon Race? "Humph, the demonic race's destiny is with me. Who else is worthy? Speak, who is it?" The red-haired girl raised her eyebrows slightly, and even the totem on her jade neck seemed to flicker with a scarlet light. "Sacred Ancestor, this woman is the 9th princess of the Qingqiu clan. Her name is Bai Jishi." Seeing the domineering aura on the red-haired woman's face, the Blue Dragon Emperor instinctively felt a trace of terror. "Bai Jishi? That's a nice name. What realm are you at?" "He should be a deity overlord." "Deity overlord? His realm is indeed a bit low. Forget it, let's capture him." The red-haired woman nodded calmly, as if she did not take the Qingqiu clan seriously at all. "Divine Ancestor, you mustn't. The Qingqiu clan has an extraordinary relationship with the Divine Master. The eldest princess of the clan was once the Divine Master's servant. Now that she is trapped in the Qingqiu clan, what if?" The Blue Dragon Emperor's face clearly flashed with a hint of fear. Although the demon clan was strong, they were not of the venerable plane. Once the war between the North Borderline and the Saint sect broke out, the demon clan would be the ones to be destroyed. Although the sacred ancestor was invincible and possessed the divine bone, it wasn't impossible for him to reach that level in the future. However, the current her was far from enough. So what if he was the divine master of the sacred cult? I am the true god of this world. The Qingqiu clan? If they dared to stop him, he would slaughter them all. What right does the human race have to rule the world? The red-haired woman snorted. You don't have to get involved in this matter. I'll do it. You just have to look after the second divine messenger. When my cultivation reaches the peak of level 9, the fortune in the sacred sect will also fall into my hands. Yes. The Blue Dragon Emperor's expression turned cold. In the end, she didn't dare to say anything and turned around to leave. That's right, the young lady in front of him wasn't someone from this era. That day when she woke up from the bottom of the sacred mountain, she had caused the winds and clouds of the northern frontier to change abruptly. 10,000 demons were alarmed. Although her cultivation level was only at the 6th stage God-Emperor realm, the aura flowing in her body was that of a true dragon. In other words, the divine bone in her body was a divine object of the demon clan. Even the Blue Dragon Emperor felt a chill when she was enveloped by his demonic aura. Perhaps she really was the hope of the demonic beasts to reunite the four borders. Only when the Blue Dragon Emperor's figure was far away did the red-haired girl softly shout, "Come out!" Buzz. A crack suddenly appeared in the void in front of him. Among them, a young man in white stepped out slowly. He looked gentle. Xian Er, do you really intend to be enemies with the Saint sect? If I want to be truly invincible in this world, I must obtain that thing in the Saint sect. Sooner or later, I will have to face it. The red-haired young woman said indifferently. She turned her head to look at the young man in front of her. Lead everyone to the 9 Nether Mountain and invite that King Yu and Bai Jishi over. Just say that this ancestor wants to bestow upon them heavenly good fortune. Of course, if anyone dares to obstruct me, kill them without mercy. Xian'er, why did you, Ao Qing, I've said it many times. Put away your thoughts. Do you think this ancestor is a woman you can obtain? If it weren't for the fact that we were of the same bloodline, do you think that a god king like you would be qualified to become my subordinate? The red-haired girl looked at him with disdain. Her glassy eyes were filled with killing intent. Why? Of course, he was going to use their daos to perfect himself. Be obedient and do your job. Perhaps in the future, I will help you unify the Endless Sea region and make you the emperor. Yes. Ao Qing nodded silently before his figure vanished once more. There was dead silence in the 10,000 demons' sacred mountain. Only the red-haired young woman was looking into the distance with a cold and arrogant expression. No one knew what she was thinking. In the next moment, she suddenly took a step forward and appeared in the depths of the sacred mountain. It was a place covered by spiritual light. This was the forbidden area of the demon clan. It was also the place where she had been sealed for thousands of years. Vaguely, there seemed to be formation runes flickering in the spiritual light. They were surging violently and intimidating. You probably didn't expect that not only did this formation not refine me, but it also helped me fuse with the godly bone within it and devour the daos of 4 people to become truly invincible, right? The red-haired young woman muttered to herself in a cold and arrogant tone. Thousands of strange phenomena began to appear around her. Flames surged, divine trees broke through the clouds, a mighty mountain fell from the sky, and waves surged. It was indescribably mystical and terrifying. An overbearing and ancient aura soared into the sky and enveloped the entire 10,000 demons' sacred mountain. The godly bone was already the path to invincibility. Why would she still need to be a slave to others? The holy sect? The divine master? This world was destined to only have one deity. However, if Ling Xiao were here, he would definitely be very happy to see this woman. That was because her body contained 5 types of Dao: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The power of the 5 elements all gathered in her body. The ancestral land of Green Hill was filled with singing birds and fragrant flowers. Unlike the Beijiang demon clan, the Green Hill clan had always avoided the world and did not involve themselves in karma. However, at this moment, the 9-tailed fox empress had a solemn expression on her face. There seemed to be a hint of sorrow between her brows. In front of her, Patriarch Bai Qian stood with his hands behind his back and looked into the distance. Patriarch, Jishi is really getting more and more presumptuous. Won't the Ghost King become an enemy of the entire Beijiang by establishing himself as the Demon King? If this matter is used by someone with ill intentions, I'm afraid Jishi. The 9-tailed fox empress sighed softly, her tone especially solemn. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, it can't be avoided. Jishi was born extraordinary. Perhaps we restricted her too much in the past. Bai Qian shook his head. There was not much emotion on his aged face. She had vaguely sensed it since the day Jishi left Green Hill. However, this time, she did not make a move to stop her. The Divine Master's arrival had already given the Green Hill clan a final deadline. If Jiro still did not realize her error by then, this clan would probably completely disappear from the lands of the Beijiang. After all, Jishi was the hope of the demon clan that the 3 demon emperors had their eyes on. Moreover, she was still young and did not know much. Perhaps the Divine Master would spare her life on account of the 3 demon emperors. At the very least, Jishi had comprehended the 9-tailed clan's strongest talent, the spatial Dao law. If she was released from Green Hill, she would have a better chance of survival. However, Bai Qian did not expect that this girl had set her heart on going to the eastern border, but had not taken a single step out of the Beijiang. Instead, she had joined forces with that woman called Jiuyo and established her own sect. To Bai Qian, this might be her fate. If he intervened forcefully, the outcome would be unpredictable. In any case, now that the variables had appeared, what she needed to do was to follow the heavenly Tao and carve out a different path for herself. Patriarch, aren't you afraid that the 3 demon emperors will be enraged and destroy the 9 underworld mountain? The 9-tailed fox empress looked miserable. Although she had 9 children, apart from Jishi and Jiro, their talents and bloodlines were mediocre. However, one of these 2 daughters had offended the holy sect and was suppressed in the clan. The other had yearned for the outside world and had not been disciplined since young. The 9-tailed fox empress saw the shadow of Jiro from back then in Jishi. If she fell into karma again, wouldn't the 9-tailed clan be consigned to eternal damnation? That old dragon is not a narrow-minded person. No matter how unreasonable Jiuyo is, as long as her cultivation is strong and her talents are outstanding, I'm afraid he will not care. Now that the demon clan is suppressed in the northern border, if there is internal strife, I'm afraid we will never be able to rise again. Bai Qian turned and looked deeply at the 9-tailed fox empress. I know your worries. Even if the 9 underworld mountain is destroyed, Jishi will be fine. Perhaps we can take this opportunity to send Jishi to the 1,000-demon sacred mountain and let the 3 demon emperors protect her. Patriarch, you mean, the 9-tailed fox empress was stunned. Then, as if she had thought of something, a trace of sadness appeared in her beautiful eyes. Sigh. I thought that with Jishi's talent, she would become the new demon emperor of the northern border sooner or later. I didn't expect fate to make fools of us. Things are different now. Bai Qian sighed with a bitter expression. Is there any news about the fluctuation on the 1,000-demon sacred mountain? Chapter 836. Old Ancestor, I've asked around. The Azure Dragon Emperor said that it was caused by his cultivation. The nine-tailed fox empress sighed softly in her heart, but she also understood Bai Qian's helplessness. Back then, when Bai Zhishi was born, she had caused a phenomenon in the heavens and earth, and the void was filled with golden clouds. As for this divine elephant, it was recognized as the will of the heavens. And Bai Zhishi did not fail to live up to everyone's expectations. Her atavistic bloodline and her strongest talent, the Space Tao Law, were both opportunities for her to become the sole ruler of the world. At that time, Bai Qian must have been looking forward to it. After all, the nine-tailed fox tribe was one of the great tribes of the Great Desolate Era. Although their tribe had ended up in the desolate lands of the Xingzhou continent, according to the ancient records of the tribe, the nine-tailed fox ancestor was a demon god from the Great Desolate Era that could suppress dragons. With that person's strength, as long as he didn't fall in the Great Divine Devil War, he would detect Bai Zhishi's aura sooner or later. At that time, if he could issue a decree for her to ascend, Qingqiu would no longer be the demon king of the northern frontier, but the true overlord of the Xingzhou. Therefore, Bai Qian decisively rejected the three emperors' request to accept Bai Zhishi as a disciple. After all, the more karma there was, the more it would affect Zhishi's qi. But now, the Qingqiu clan was burdened with the killing intent of the Divine Master. If Bai Zhiro was stubborn, with that person's temperament, he would not let anyone from the Qingqiu clan go. Most likely, the ancestor wanted to send Bai Zhishi to the 10,000 Demons' sacred mountain because he wanted to borrow the Azure Dragon Emperor's power to give her a chance of survival. Was it caused by that old thing's cultivation? Bai Qian shook her head slowly. She had seen the strange phenomenon in the void that day clearly. Heaven and earth were overturned, as if an immortal had descended. Furthermore, the demonic might contained within it was the true nine heavens' saint might. Although the old dragon's cultivation was terrifying, it wasn't enough to attract such a spectacle. He was lying. Forget it. Let's not worry about it for now. Did Zhiro agree? No. Ancestor, what do you think she's persisting for? The nine-tailed fox empress gritted her teeth. She felt a burst of anger whenever Bai Zhiro was mentioned. I don't know what she's holding on to, but the secret in her heart will definitely overturn the situation in the Xingzhou continent. Perhaps it's also a form of protection for our race. Now, I only hope that Zhishi can grow up quickly. Bai Qian sighed and turned to leave. The nine-tailed fox empress was the only one left. She looked exhausted as she stood at the peak of Green Hill and remained silent for a long time. 9 Nether Mountain, Great Hall at the peak. Demonic winds blew in all directions on the mountain, and the demonic aura shook the sky. There were large birds looking down from the sky and black tigers leaping from the mountains. Colorful feathers overflowed as they rushed over from all directions. Now, the entire northern borderline had their eyes on 9 Underworld Mountain. All the demons wanted to witness the crowning ceremony of the 11th Demon King with their own eyes. It was just that most of the demon clans did not come to congratulate him. Instead, they wanted to see how embarrassed this king you would be. Although there were many demons in the northern frontier, they were all ruled by the 10,000 Demons' sacred mountain. In the past 1,000 years, there had never been a demon who dared to proclaim themselves as king and conspire to rule the world. Currently, this nether king had risen to the top in a domineering manner. He had only used a year's time to stand at the peak of the northern border. Although he was feared by others, he more or less lacked some foundation. Looking at the demon race, which of those who could be called kings and emperors did not have a long history and many experts in their clan? A woman who came out of nowhere, gathered a bunch of rotten fish and shrimps, and wanted to become a demon king? Ridiculous! In the eyes of many, if not for the little princess of Green Hill, Bai Zhishi, holding the fort on 9 Underworld Mountain, it would have been slaughtered and suppressed long ago. However, today, the king you had openly challenged the rules of the northern frontier. The 10,000 Demons' sacred mountain would definitely not sit by and do nothing. For 7 days, the entire northern frontier changed drastically. It was as if a storm was about to come. Hee, isn't this young Master Jean E of the Golden Condor clan? Why, I heard that 9 Underworld Mountain used to be your clan's territory. Now that it's been taken over by someone else, how do you feel? Suddenly, a cold laugh came from the crowd of demons. All the demons turned to look. They saw a young man in a golden robe, with a long face and a nose, looking coldly at the person who spoke. He did not say anything. Behind him, there were 2 fierce-looking elders following. Their auras were terrifying. It was obvious that these people were not just here to watch the show. This is going to be a good show. The Golden Condor clan thinks of themselves as the #1 royal clan. They have never taken Green Hill seriously. Now that the little princess of Green Hill has taken over this mountain, I'm afraid that later, there will be a battle. Sigh. It's not just the Golden Condor clan. This King Yu is extremely arrogant. Even the Ashwolf clan can't stand it. If there's a chance later, I would like to see how strong this King Yu is. The demons stood in front of the palace and discussed animatedly. Suddenly, a terrifying demonic aura came from the palace. 9 Underworld was dressed in a black robe. His expression was cold as he slowly walked out of the palace. Beside him, Xiaope, Huahua, and a few other 9 Underworld Mountain God Emperors followed closely. Only Layering Shadow was nowhere to be seen. Ling Xiao had sent them here to investigate the situation in the northern frontier. The second divine envoy was still here. According to the information he received, this divine envoy was also a 9th-grade Great Emperor. Although his strength was not as terrifying as Duguyunjin's, this person had the blood of the demon clan flowing in his body. The northern frontier was the territory of the 10,000 demon clan. If he wanted to kill him here, there would be many risks. Knowing the attitudes of the various clans would make it easier for Ling Xiao to set up a plan to kill the demons. Everyone. Suddenly, a cold voice came from the peak of the mountain. Then, the demons' gazes landed on the beautiful woman in front of the palace. Suddenly, 9 Nether Mountain fell silent for a moment. Most of the demons present had only heard of King Yu's name. They had never seen her in person. Moreover, she was a vicious and merciless demon. No matter how one looked at it, she looked sinister and ugly. But why was she so enchanting and beautiful? Swish. Hiss. Immediately after, when the crowd saw the other graceful figure beside 9 Nether, gasps could be heard from the top of the mountain. Huahua's leather armor clung to her body. It made her look even more imposing. Her waist was slender, and her legs were long and slender. Her fair neck, which was exposed outside the leather armor, seemed to emit a divine light. Although she did not emit any demonic aura, the coldness on her face revealed her supreme nobility. She gave people a sense of arrogance that kept them at arm's length. Gulp. Suddenly, the anger in the demons' hearts dissipated. At this moment, they only wanted to approach the 2 demonic women and ask them how old they were and whether they had a good partner. No. They would tie them up and bring them back to the clan to get married on the spot. Welcome, everyone, to my king-conferring ceremony. Seeing the expressions on the demons' faces, 9 Underworld's eyes flashed coldly. Although 9 Underworld did not know why Ling Xiao asked her to gather all the geniuses and experts of the various clans in the northern frontier on 9 Underworld Mountain, she still felt slightly uneasy. Young Master can't be thinking of killing all these demons in one go, right? That can't be. Although Young Master's talent is close to demonic and his methods are brilliant, Ling people may be famous in the eastern frontier, but compared to the northern frontier, it is really not enough. Given Young Master's thoughts, he would definitely not do such a risky thing. But why? You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.